1st. We'll call to order at 6:37 p.m. No, it's not a joke. First order of business. Review of the surplus equipment request, Public Library, 5th read.
So your package should be the request form.
The only comment I had is with the value of approximately 700 on that iMac, should we do something other than just, her recommendation was throw it away, and that doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know, you know more than I do.
Yeah.
I don't know the values of the, with the operating system that it has, the processor that it has. That might
Yeah. Did we get the form? Did I miss? Oh, never mind. It's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Duh. The one where the 862 is. I don't think that's.
You don't think it's accurate?
No, I'm wondering if it's more based on like original.
Oh,
Maybe the thought process wasn't kind of what we're thinking of when we ask it.
yeah, like I said, I don't know a lot about it. I would just,
Yeah.
No, it's
I can double check. But it is a 5-year-old one, so pretty limited, if any value. I mean, maybe someone would want to reuse it. Again, I got to wait the hard drive, so won't be very usable right away without some investment. So I don't think there's a lot of value in it, personally.
I was gonna say 5-year-old technology, I don't believe would be
I would say
worth.
rather than just recycling it, just you could offer it up. I don't care if you offer it up for free after it's wiped to, first come, first served to a town resident, or,
Sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it won't have anything on it. It won't even have an operating system.
As long as
Unless,
they know what they're getting.
yeah, as long as they know what they're getting, that's fine. Yep, no problem. We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't a Mac, I would say it probably has 0 value, but
Yeah, with Mac.
just the Mac, there might be a little bit.
Yeah, somebody
so.
might want to be able to, they might want to use it for something.
Agreed. Okay.
Looking for a motion?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to deem the list of items on the public library surplus request form and dispose of appropriately, wiping any hard drives prior to disposal.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
Did you say they are getting brought to town hall? Yep. Okay. I saw them over there this weekend. I just want to make sure. At the library still.
Yes.
Review of meeting minutes. We have May 8th. I'm sorry?
No, sorry, just,
No, that's the draft. Sorry. Never mind. I'm reading the wrong thing.
yeah, June
Don't mind me.
21st.
Thank you. June 21st, 2022. That's the first one.
Make a motion to approve minutes from June 21st, 2022 as written.
I will second. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions?
And I will abstain.
Minutes of August 29th, 2022.
Motion to approve minutes August 29th, 2022 as written.
Second. Discussion?
That was a lengthy one. 13 pages.
Yeah.
That was when you all worked on the town code?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that's stuff that we're just skimming back past now.
Just-
A little refresher.
Groundhog's Day,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, really. All good?
All good.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Abstentions?
Abstain.
And minutes of March 11th, 24.
Motion to approve minutes from Monday, March 11th, 2024 as written.
Second.
Discussion?
No.
No
All those in
discussion.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review and issuance of the 11th water commitment of FY24.
There's a memo with that to get permission from you all to also include either a reminder or a request for water customers to consider signing up for the reverse notification system so that we can offer more targeted messaging when there's an issue related to the water department.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Looking for a motion?
Please.
Motion to approve the 11th water commitment for FY '24. Water use charges in the amount of $44,936.16.
I'll second. Any discussion?
No.
Just a point of order, do we need to add that notification as part of the motion to accept it, or just a verbal agreement?
Yeah, I think it's just are we okay with carving that out and making that notice to the
Okay.
water users? I don't think we need to call it out because it's an opt-in, so.
Okay. Fair enough, I have no other concerns with it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
On that same thread, update on water service inventory project, notice to customers.
So Pete and I have recently met with Ty and Bond, and they are ready for the next phase of the project, which includes going out and meeting with residents and doing the basement inspections. It's completely voluntary. So the best way for them to communicate the project is to take our customer list, send a mailing. That's an example of the notice that they plan to send out in your packets. And it would go out this week or next week, and the goal would be to conduct the inspections in the month of May. And then that data that's collected, and it defines what they're looking to do in each location, would be integrated in with the research they've already done from our maps and from the other investigations that they've done throughout the system. And then they'll start putting together the final inventory. And if there is any concerns noted, make an action plan for us.
Did you say it's voluntary?
Correct.
Because in the postcard it says it's required. And I know the language is probably meant that the water department's required to do it, but it
Right.
reads like
We can
it's
clarify
required that you get inspection.
that. No, we will clarify
To
that.
me, at least, in that left blue box on the postcard. I think I understood the spirit of it, but I think reading it is going to,
We don't want to confuse anybody.
yeah. Maybe instead of required, just is performing a voluntary or something like that. Voluntary inventory.
Right. Okay. We'll make that
Or an
change.
inventory of, for all connected. This is voluntary, or something to just be clear about that. This is the LSL. What was the lead service inventory? That whole, it's a loan, it's a repayable loan, it's a
Yep.
grant, it's a, yeah, okay.
Correct. So we can absolutely make that correction. The phone number has been left blank right now. That's because we're just waiting for them to assign the number. It's going to go to one of those services that queues up the messages for response. So they're just waiting for that to be assigned.
So, is Ty and Bond doing the inspection? Or is
They're-
our water department doing it?
Ty and Bond is coordinating this piece, and they do have a subcontractor that's going to be coming out and doing some of the work out in the field with them.
At the residence?
Correct.
Okay.
If we're needed to be involved at the locations, I'm sure we can work alongside them like we have when we were doing the sewer manhole inspections and things of that nature.
Yeah, I know there's a footnote there that says we've hired a engineering firm to facilitate it, but all the references to the water department don't for me at least, clearly say a subcontractor is going to be doing the work. You know, you're not going to see someone that you know from the water department necessarily. If
we have available time.
thank you.
I should have someone available to go with them when they go, especially entering the houses, because we found after doing, for example, doing our samples at Maple Ave, better reception, getting into the homes, taking the samples. So I'm planning on doing the same thing with this. Have a town representative with them, whether it be myself or one of my other 3 staff.
Okay. So you are planning to try to accompany all the time?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I have no concerns. I'm just thinking that very reason. Like, I don't know who this is knocking on the
Familiar
door, staying
face,
there with the
correct.
water department, you know, and doing this without maybe being really explicit that we're having
Right.
one there. If there's a town employee who's on the department to explain why there's other people with them, I'm not concerned.
Okay.
Of you guys.
Yeah, I'm curious how many are gonna take up the opportunity to just do it online.
Well, the goal that Time Bond had said initially we're going to start with, like, try to do 20% inside inspections. And that would, because we have to do a percentage amount, and that would be the goal to start with. I mean, if we can go further.
And this is really focused on houses before a date in 1970. So houses built after that would be built with materials that wouldn't include lead. So they're less concerned about those structures.
Right.
So this is our older housing stock that they're interested in.
And scanning that QR code and doing it online does not satisfy that 20%, correct?
Correct. The way I understood it, ideally,
So I understood.
It's 20% of eyes on from the
Correct.
department, looking at it, inspecting
Yes.
it yourself.
scanning the code, if you were to scan that right now, it'll bring up the form.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was looking at it.
Yeah.
So we'll clarify that there'll be a contractor working with the water department on this.
Yeah,
And we're going to clarify that we're required to do the survey and report back to DEP, but participation in the inspection is voluntary.
Yes. I don't know that we need to be more explicit about subcontracting if we're going to have a department person with.
Okay.
I was
Right.
concerned more so if we don't have a department person also
Got it.
accompanying.
Okay.
That would be more likely to get turned away and like, I don't know who this is.
Exactly.
Right.
We have a solicitor, you know who knows,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I'm not as concerned about the language. I don't know if either of you are about
No,
a
I-
subcontractor. I
With
think
the
it's
number
okay.
of people that solicit without permits and the number of people that tried whatever scam of the week it is,
Right,
I know they wouldn't be coming to my house.
Right.
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 So I think it's more just making sure the required voluntary language is clearer.
Got it.
I don't know that anywhere on here I read that it's like kind of looking at lead inventory specifically, and I don't know that we want to. I just noticed it wasn't on there specifically. It just references materials, you know, documenting the material types.
Right.
So not a preference. I don't know.
There's definitely, the town water department page has been updated with more information about the overall project and what's being required with links back to EPA and DEP. So if folks do follow the link that's provided there, it will take them to that information.
Okay. We too could create an info QR code.
We can.
No, not on here because I don't want to confuse people which one to follow
Fair enough. But yes, we could do
in
that.
the future.
Yep.
Becoming more and more common.
Maybe at a future date and time.
Yeah. Other than updating the language around required voluntary clarity, anything else on this? Any changes, any concerns?
Okay.
Okay,
We'll make those corrections and we'll get it out.
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
The remainder is really for the joint meeting.
take a pause. don't
Yeah.
have anything else to add before the joint meeting.
All right, move a recess at 6:52, return at 7.
Okay,
Is there a second?
second, yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, we'll see you at 7. Call the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee to order. I'm going to bounce around amongst the budget and ATM stuff tonight, I'm sure, as we discuss. What I'd like to do is start with the annual town meeting warrant, and I'll welcome the treasurer up. We had been discussing potentially whether or not to put the FY24 elected official compensation back on the ATM, and so I had asked her to come propose that to all of us and talk through whether we would be willing to do that again or not. So if you, one moment. Yes, sir?
The volume is very, like,
Very faint.
very faint back here.
Yeah, I'm having trouble.
Okay.
I'll try to get it working, the
All right.
speaker back there.
We'll try to speak up.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, welcome. Obviously, I said it very briefly, but if you'd like to elaborate on the requests, and I don't know if you've spoke with the
Yes,
other.
I did speak with the other ones. They're also in favor of putting it back on. I just think a little more awareness, and I think that, you know, it was disappointing that it was not passed, as everyone in the town received raises. I also think that these positions are going to be really hard to fill if, you know, people in these positions do go elsewhere. I think it's going to be a higher cost in the long run. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Happy to answer.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I hadn't prepared it, so I'll try to come across the best that I can. Mostly for the people at home who we hope will show up and vote. We've had a plan in place for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I believe, that at least, where the Finance Committee, the Select Board routinely review what people might get for raises, and some of it's based on inflation and cost of living and all that stuff, and some of it's based on what other towns around are paying. Sometimes we're a little high, sometimes we're not. But it's a plan in general, and we sort of revised the entire payment plan of step raises and stuff last year or so that we can retain good people. They're not constantly leaving and going somewhere else. We have to train somebody else, and then they'll stay for a year or two, go somewhere else, we have to train somebody else. So it's my understanding we were not just asking for an increase in a pay for the town treasurer. It was a systematic look at what is everybody paid? Are they paid at a fair rate? Maybe more than some people want to pay. It's everybody's their money, you can do what you want with it, but in this case, people at town meeting, I hope, will think of themselves as an employer. You've all been an employee someplace. You wanted to be treated fair. If you did a good job, you wanted to get paid good. And if you didn't get paid what you thought you should, you go work somewhere else where they'll pay you more. That's sort of typically what happens as an employee. As an employer, which typically they're paying the bills. I mean, we come up with a plan, but we ask everybody to treat our employees the way they'd like to be treated. So since they're on the other side of the seat now, if that makes sense to anybody, I hope the words are taken in good spirit, because it's certainly not, we like this person, let's pay them a lot. We don't like that person, let's not pay them much. It's a documented plan, what we think is fair pay for what's being paid around the area. Is that some way near accurate or disagreeable with anybody?
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that and elaborating on that. I would also like to even present the step and grade, even at the town meeting, if people had questions, just to show this is where everyone falls, and it wasn't just a magic number that we pulled out of the sky. And I think that's where people may have been confused, and I think that more education and explaining it more. I know we did go into quite some depth in the January meeting, but I figured we would give it one last shot with your approval.
My comment's simple. I was in favor of it then. I'm still in favor of it now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to my comment was going to be that we have
a set of wage tables, and we have 3 employees that are paid now off of a old wage table that has not been updated because we haven't had the authorization to do so. I will bring this back as many times as I have to put them back on the same wage table as all of their other coworkers within the town. So,
Appreciate it, thank you.
Other thoughts, comments?
No.
so amend the warrant to include? Yes, please.
Yes.
Also, while I'm up here, can I talk about one other thing? Or would you like to?
Hang on.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. Yes,
Okay.
but hang on. You know, I do know we were questioned last time about not sending out a survey, and so, you know, I think we'll be prepared for that question differently maybe than before, but for those that are watching, when we are voted and empowered to sit here, you entrust us with presenting what is the best fiscally responsible articles, and that is our purview. So we do not need to, per se, do that, and obviously we have to weigh what we think is best for the town, best for the taxes, fiscally responsible, and, you know, I agree from the standpoint of we will spend more to have a quality person in those roles than we're proposing changing it to. And, you know, we've talked a few times about changing some of these positions over to appointed. I know there's varying opinions, but the potential is that we end up with vacancies because we're not doing the right things to retain our talent, and then can't fill them at all, or can't fill them with competent individuals who can do things like bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest rate changes and other things, which other towns got to benefit from as well, you know, and we'll appreciate. But those kind of things that we will be up against potentially, and the market isn't getting easier to find qualified people for these roles. So there's a lot to it, and the best solution for the town overall isn't always the most cost-effective solution. So
Well, it's the most cost-effective solution. It's not always the
the cheapest.
the cheapest solution.
There we go. That's what I'm trying to say.
Penny wise and pound foolish won't always get you where you need to be.
Agreed.
Jake, you touched on it a little bit. Would you be able to put together maybe like a top 10 list of things that you do in your position that people aren't aware of, such as the interest rate negotiation that you just did for us? That is a substantial source of income that you've negotiated for the community that probably a lot of people outside of this room are completely unaware of. So those kind of like little hidden's not the right word, but maybe the not so public facing aspects of your job that you do. If you could put something like that together for us, I think it might be helpful for people to see that it's more than just sitting behind the desk, taking phone calls and looking at a spreadsheet going, yep, this looks great today. Like there is a lot of nuance in what you do for us, and I think that might be missed on some levels.
Absolutely, thank you.
Maybe like the last 3 years, you know, I think our investments, you know, with our capital, with our stabilization funds, with our OPEB, things like that, like there's a lot of return there that we don't see or talk about here in a lot because it doesn't necessarily feed a budget. It's a savings, and it just keeps growing the savings. So, but you are managing those, so we appreciate it. It's a good point.
By
Thank you.
accounts, you're managing them well, so.
Yeah, they're growing, so, and that's all we can all want. You had something else.
I did. I just wanted to let you know that I was able to negotiate even further, and we have a 4% locked-in rate until next April for 12 months.
Nice.
Thank
I
you.
knew you were working on it, so great.
So I'm gonna confirm that.
I appreciate that. Any questions, other comments for Jeff?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I know we'll be bouncing around a little, but I wanted to get that done, so if Jen needed to leave, she could. Good with switching back to the budget, because it'll drive changes in the ATM further, I'm sure. Good? Okay. So FY '25 operating and capital budget. Okay, so maybe just starting from the memo that Brian included. At the moment, new growth anticipated is only 12,000 by the initial kind of quick look at it from the assessing office. So I don't know if we want to leave that at 43 or bring it down. That's one. We have the locked in 4%, so does that drive any change? I know it's only for 1 year and that'll only be, be 2/3 of the next fiscal year, but obviously, again, I understand we talked about the reliability of that over time if we include that on something that is a sustained cost. The debt exclusion, so principal assessor put together the numbers of what that may look like for FY25. I think there's one issue with it. It didn't come to mind quick enough last meeting, but 3.4 is the wrong number, I believe. The updated cost estimate last spring was 4.3, which after the 600 was 3.7, not 3.4. And what we had in those discussions was 3.7. So has something changed to bring it down to 3.4, or did we just start from the old number by mistake? Do you know? I mean, because I think you said it last meeting too, and it didn't sound right, and I didn't know why.
The number I was given to work was 3.4, but if
By us?
that's what I recall getting back
Okay.
from folks. But
No,
if,
well, we had it wrong then. That's
it's
fine.
okay. So if 3.7 is what it should be, we can make that adjustment.
I think so.
Okay.
The number for capital, the number keeper for capital apologizes.
That's not who's wrong. Just let's get the right number. That was my.
We're all capable of making mistakes, but if we can fix them in advance before they go further.
So I'll make that amendment. And there were updated charts from the assessor's office that came out this afternoon that I forwarded, and there's some printed copies on that table over there.
Which are in our current packet.
They're in the updated packet I sent you.
Yeah.
Correct. And then, I know it's more than what you asked for, but Jackie, obviously Jackie can speak to it. Jackie provided you with the base anticipated levy looks like for FY25 based on FY24 valuations, and then gave you a scenario for a capital expenditure exclusion, which I know that's not what you're looking at, but also a 3-year and a 5-year debt. The question that you need to put on for town meeting and on the ballot does not require you to anticipate interest and administrative costs at this point, or even state the term at this point. There's a lot of moving factors in that. So,
So the ballot question doesn't contemplate the term or the actual amount, just the base
there's too many
principal?
factors that would evolve that you couldn't put in the ballot question.
Got it.
I
So
didn't
approval
put-
of the principal amount authorizes whatever the interest is.
So borrowing authority, I put the dollar amount, I'll change it to 3.7. But of course, the interest and the other administrative costs would be added onto that afterwards. So the ballot question does not reflect that.
Nor does the article. Talks to it, but doesn't anticipate what it will be. It
Correct.
just authorizes us to tax that on top of it,
Correct.
on top of the principal amount.
Correct.
You can tell how unfamiliar we are with doing this.
I didn't put it back in this week's packet, but in last week's packet, I'd given a primer on the 3 different override options. And so we've been using that as our guidance for crafting the questions.
Okay.
So I know this is an extreme example that I'm using in my question, but is there a backup mechanism if we find at a further date that the interest rates are unreasonable or the administrative rates are? Like,
If you all start the process of borrowing, if the voters authorize you, you go down that road, the article authorizes the select board and the treasurer to do that work together. If what you get back from your financial advisors for options are not satisfactory, there's no obligation for you to go forward with the borrowing. We can't go forward with the project either, but yes, just because it's approved doesn't mean you immediately have to go out and borrow.
It's just an authorization too if we decide it's in the best interest.
It's like the Church Street Bridge, as of right now.
Right.
We have the authority to do it, but there hasn't been a need, and we have the opportunity to fund it in a different way, so we haven't exercised it. So,
I just wanted to be sure.
Of course, yeah.
New guy on the block question.
and we linked the approval in the ATM warrant language to be conditional upon the approval of the ballot question.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't pass at the ballot, then you can't go forward
It's
even if
dead.
it was authorized.
Sure. Thank you. Just
Of
wanted
course.
to be certain.
I mean, at some point, we probably need to kind of revisit whether we think it's the right time to put that on, if we still want to do it or not. I know capital recommended it. And I know we were, I think when capital discussed it, because I was there, we had already had the tax rate change for this year, but maybe not. But just, contemplating all the impacts and whether we think it's the right time or the right thing to do. We could also put it on a special for June, which we are doing one for the town code. And I think there's one or two other things that we've talked about holding for that rather than putting them on the annual. So that could be another option. It wouldn't change putting it on the election warrant, or at least I don't think we should if we're going to do either meeting, or we hold another election, which would seem silly to do a month or two later. We know we're going to hold a special because there's other things to handle, so that's kind of a given, but
My concern would be just knowing that capital erroneously was working with the wrong number. And so what does that look like? What is that, what do those figures look like with a corrected number? Is it a substantial change between what we thought and what we had and what it's actually going to be? And the only other thing I will say, I appreciate all the work that Jackie did, but sometimes too much information is too much information. So if working on this forward, if we could just have the 3-year that we asked for, because there's a lot in all of that. And 3 years is what we wanted to work with. So if we could just get that information, I think that would be the most helpful.
not perfectly linear, but a ballpark is like 10% higher. It's not that simple math-wise, but it gets you in the ballpark of the difference.
You have a hand up.
No, understood.
Oh, didn't know you just saw it. Okay.
No, I did. I didn't. I wasn't calling on anyone at this point.
Okay.
Letting the boards and committees discuss it. I'll look to capital first and made the recommendation.
As a member of capital, I say we go ahead, we put this off.
I think way too long, and I think it needs to be done as soon as possible.
I like keeping it in the annual. If for no other reason, we're gonna get more voters to show up at the annual than we would at the special. And we would have more of the town weighing in on it.
I am torn. I will be really honest. I agree with the theory that having it on the annual is better because we definitely will have the most audience. So I definitely agree with it from that standpoint. I very strongly feel that that building has to be dealt with this year. I don't feel like we should be delaying. I don't want to lose a $600,000 grant. I am a little concerned that with the raise to our taxes, how this is going to be received and if the residents are actually going to be supportive of this. And there is a part of me that does wonder if we should just tear the Band-Aid off and just pull it from general stabilization instead. And then it's just done, and while it is still the residents' tax dollars paying for it, it's a different form of that funding. My concern with that is that that would then limit potentially other projects that could come from the general stabilization. So I know previously at the capital planning meeting, I was all for it, and then tax bills and, all that, and it was an increase this year, and I know people are hurting, and I'm really torn. I firmly believe that building can no longer sit there in its current state. I think I'm just not sure of the best way to handle it.
If we do general stabilization, that would trigger our payback policy.
Yep.
And I don't know where we'd have funding to pay that back.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Because we're taking every penny of free cash to try to keep capital
I mean,
moving forward on some,
Correct.
hopefully some unreliable, stable method. I don't know how we'd get a payback, and I don't think it specifies a time,
it doesn't.
but
Just a
still, the
plan.
longer we go, the more expensive that.
I mean, a 5-year payback is, just shy of $750,000 a year to pay back.
Yeah. Yep. And yes, we don't contemplate paying ourselves interest back that we've
Correct,
lost. But we are losing that for every year, and $750 a year is a big number. And taking a 1/3 almost reduction in our general stabilization for more than 5 years even, I mean, the loss in interest is going to be significant.
But I also know, and I don't know how much of it was just throwing an idea out there or how serious they were. The Senior Housing Committee talked about possibly using general stabilization as a funding source for that project. And so I don't want to limit ourselves, and I don't want to use, I don't want to prohibit another project from moving forward. We've got bridges, we've got all kinds of stuff. I guess personally, I'm just starting to question how successful this question would be in the current way we're proposing it.
Other comments, thoughts?
My comments are when it was proposed and discussed, the language stated that if it failed at town, it would go to auction. We'd be done with it one way or the other. And I stood behind it then, I'll stand behind it now. At this point, we need to move on from the building. If the voters don't want to pay for it through a debt exclusion, that's fine. The voters have that say. And then the next step is, the treasurer's already authorized to put it up for auction. Highest bidder can take it. Those are the two choices in my mind. That's what was presented, and I stood behind it then. I'll stand behind it now. I don't want to see it come out of stabilization. I think there's too much going on in the next 3 to 5 years that roughly $3.5 million hit to stabilization is substantial enough that it can impact the next 3 to 5 years of projects that are only going to grow in cost.
Agreed.
Yes.
Why don't we just drop the question altogether, put it out to auction, and save the aggravation? Because, like you said, we got other projects coming on the road, and, instead of dragging this thing on, just put it out to auction.
Well, the difference with a debt exclusion is that we are not burdening our raise and appropriation levy limits with it. We are asking the residents if they are willing to burden their tax payment for a period of 3 years, and then it returns. So it's a little bit different. That it won't affect what we are able to raise and appropriate for FY26 or 27 and beyond. So I'm still okay with moving it forward. I get what you're saying. It's
But, like Deb brought up, the rate, the evaluation went down at the Mountain Project. People took a hit this year. This is another big
Oh,
hit
yeah.
on top of that.
I'm not saying that I think it's even going to pass. But it's not, I don't want to sit here and say that, and presuppose that I think it's going to fail, so let's just pull it off the warrant. That's, I'd let the people have their vote on it, and if they vote it down, then we know what the next steps are. If people say, I don't want to see it just go to another owner, and then they sit and do whatever they want with it for 20 years while we battle with them as a defunct owner, then they can vote yes and we'll tear it down. One way or the other, we'll have an answer. But we'll let the voters make that decision.
We also, just for clarity, still have the RFP out and will.
Correct.
You know, if there is a proposal that is viable, that we think is, you know, reasonable and we can move forward with, then obviously we will pass over this. Annual, obviously it'll have to be on the warrant, for the election warrant. We won't know before then.
Could you refresh, when are the RFPs due?
This Thursday.
This Thursday?
Yep.
Are they being opened at that time, or like?
They'll be opened, who submitted them and the proposal, high level, but we won't be able to do a full review this Thursday,
Okay,
assuming we have more than one. But that work would happen in the following week.
okay.
But we don't have the luxury of enough time to continue.
Yeah.
To continue these things. We
Yeah.
have to make these decisions before that. We'll
Right.
have that data, so.
Yeah, we need to make a decision on the election warrant tonight.
Yep.
I just couldn't remember if it was April or if it was, for some reason I thought it was more at the end of the month, not this quick, that's all.
Right. The board did adjust it. It was originally 2 weeks ago, but we wanted to leave just a little more time to get through a little bit more of the budget and allow developers to have a little more time with the RFP.
Okay.
So, this Thursday.
If we put this on the, election warrant and on the annual town meeting warrant, if it passes the election and then someone was to move and change it to come from stabilization, is that valid on the floor? And would it would contradict the election at that point and wouldn't be the same, right?
We'd have to hold another election.
We'd have to hold another election?
Well, stabilization transfer does not require an election, so you wouldn't need another election. The two
Oh,
things
that's
would
right.
no longer match.
Oh, gotcha,
The
okay.
question would be more, and this is more of a town moderator question than a legal counsel question, is that too great of a change to change the source from a debt exclusion to a general stabilization transfer? If they ruled that it was, we'd have to call another special town meeting to be able to do that work.
We should ask council ahead of time, just in case, because those options have come up in the conversations we've had with the public forums, so, I mean, it could come up again. We at least know that, well, if that's how people want to vote, then we can bring it back at the special, but we can't do that night.
Correct.
Excuse me.
You could always put more than one option on the town meeting warrant. Pass over the one that's not necessary. Or pass over all of them if none of them are necessary.
I did think of that before, but I also am concerned about the too many options problem, right? It gets confusing, and
Right.
if the first one doesn't pass, then you can't go back. If the second one doesn't pass, I guess you can technically, but it starts getting confusing as well as messy.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
That was more clarification.
Did anyone need clarification on anything?
Well, on my part, I just want to make sure the number is 3.7.
Oh.
And you're only looking for 3 years. I just want to also say I put the other two because I anticipated that question coming up at town meeting based on the informational meetings we had held earlier for the debt exclusion discussion you had had 2 years ago or last year. So that's why they were there. But if you want, I can actually figure out what it will be at 3.7 tonight. I brought my laptop and I can plug in the numbers.
Would you like to know?
Yeah, if you can, that'd be awesome.
Yes,
So
please.
it's the yellow sheet you want to pay attention to.
At 3.7, yes, please. Thank you. Am I hearing generally that it sounds like overall we do want to continue with it on the ATM warrant though, and then we'll see what the voters choose.
That's
And
my,
I think we want to stick with one option. We want to stick with 3-year debt exclusion.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Look like there's more yeses than majority.
Yes.
Trying to think of what measurement there. So we'll get the updated numbers so we have that clarity. I don't think it's going to change what we're going to do, obviously, at this point.
I know, can I ask a question? Just so we can tidy up one thing?
Yes.
On the election warrant, that
Yes.
question that's on there, can I
Yes.
just get a vote from the select board that you're instructing the town clerk to add that?
Right now or before the night's out?
As long as we do not forget it before you adjourn.
That's fine. We can do it now if you guys are ready to.
I think that's on page. Where's the select? Oh, I went too far in my packet.
Page 11 of the packet, question 1, debt exclusion.
Yes. Correct.
Oh, yep, yep. Because it's generally elections and it's there, I just don't even think about the fact that we actually also have it in the ATM. It's
Right.
reflected in
There's
both
actually
places.
2 warrants in your ATM warrant, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Which I find entertaining. We put it in the annual town meeting warrant, which occurred after.
But because the notice for this goes out in advance and they're held next to each other, legally, this is an acceptable way to warn residents of both.
Oh, I
Yep.
see. Okay, interesting. So that language, shall the town be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 and 1/2, so-called the amounts required to pay for the bond issued in order to demolish the structures and related site preparation services at the former IEP mill site.
And the question would be a yes, no.
Related site preparation services, I don't know better language, but I feel like it sounds like who knows what we're going to prep it for or do there.
It needs to be safe and level by the time you're done.
Right.
So however we convey whatever it takes to make the site
Yeah.
safe for the general public. I just didn't want it to be limited to demolish.
No,
And
I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something better, but I don't know that there is. It just would hope to convey more that we aren't doing all kinds of things. We're doing the minimum, if you will.
Right.
The site cleanup.
I was going
but-
to say demolish and clean up. Simple. It's
And
open.
related site cleanup
Yeah.
needed, maybe, and rather than
Yeah,
services.
site preparation services sounds like we're prepping to build something as
Okay.
opposed to site cleanup.
Demolish the structures and necessary
Or
cleanup, site
I was going
cleanup.
to say demolish and clean up to make safe condition.
Sure. Any of
Yeah.
those.
That gives a, like an end state, which is what I was trying to get to, so I like that.
To make it safe condition.
Safe, clean site. Might as well put clean in there.
Okay.
Would you reread that for us before we vote on it, if you're amending it right now?
So the question now would read, shall the town of Irving be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 and 1/2 so called the amounts required to pay for the bond issued in order to demolish the structures and necessary site cleanup to make a safe and clear site condition at the former IP mill site. Remove the word condition, clean site at the former IP mill.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second?
And
Oh.
instruct the town clerk to add it to the warrant.
Are you amending it as
Accepted.
such? Are you seconding the amended?
I second the amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, back to budget. The other one is the elementary school voted on a budget scenario last week. So that is an adjustment to the draft budgets that we have.
Just
For
wanted-
Claire, go ahead.
I'll go after you. I gotta find it first.
Okay. I'm around 38, 36, 38, 39, 40 on our packet. Really high levels is not all the detail of what they did, but they adjusted their grant funding according to the anticipated grant amounts for the year. And adjusted for anticipating only one, enough enrollment for one preschool class. So the net change to their 2025 requested budget is a $4,002 reduction from their 2024 budget, so almost flat. After grants, it results in a reduced request from last year for raise and appropriate for the town, bringing that down to $3,789,432. So that helps with our overall balancing here in our worksheet. Do you have an updated EES number based on that? I'm sorry, updated education number?
I did it.
I did it too. I just
See,
want to
my
make
number's
sure that
matched.
we all have the same number.
5,718,641.
Bingo.
Okay.
Yes?
You gotta add in the elected officials.
I left off the elected officials,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay. So for the summary sheet, for those who are running their own copy here, education changes to 5,718,641.
Which puts us positive by almost 100.
Are we updating new growth to 12, or are we
Well, I was
leaving
gonna
at
say,
43?
that one, we glossed over that real quickly.
Yeah.
Did.
When the new numbers came in at 12, I would suggest we put it at 12. If that's what it's a known number at this point.
Estimated, yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't recall, what was our final decision? We had been talking about the other special articles, and I know a couple had reduced it by 50K, and a couple of us had not. So did we determine that we were going to leave it at the 318, or that we were going to reduce it by 50K?
I think we left last meeting not reducing it, but, not, we knew we were coming back to budget discussion
Okay.
tonight, talking about
Right.
positions skipped, positions increases for staffing this year that were requested, and kind of coming back to that, so I would say it's, at least for my tally, it isn't reduced yet.
Okay.
Did I miss anything else that we came into with changes for tonight? I think that was the,
That was it. It was the revenue, it was the interest rate, and the new number from the school department.
Except The new number for the school department is not reflected in Article 7.
I made, to be very upfront about that, I made no changes to the town meeting warrant draft, knowing that you all still had to have these conversations.
Fair enough. Just on the workbook?
I only did the
Okay.
work, yep.
All right.
Yeah, I figured when you all are done tonight, I'm gonna have to go back through the warrant and change it
Just
all
make
again.
sure everything
Yep.
matches. Okay.
And that's why I said we'll go back to budget and come back to ATM, because I
It's gonna
figured we're
it's
gonna change
it all.
more.
Yep.
All right. There was other things in the ATM warrant that I know, in the FY '25 budget draft that we wanted to discuss. So we had positions, both increased hours, new positions, positions passed over, or not funded in FY '24, not funded in the failed override mid-year. So, we wanted to talk about those. I think there was a few other places we wanted to look at too, so. I want to make sure I have all of them listed that I recall that we had, and then make sure I didn't miss any in our current requests. So, we had the PD, cadet, and academy. That kind of goes together. We had the highway operator, equipment
Yep.
operator.
Fourth firefighter.
So I wanted to, if you don't mind, I don't mind how we go through them, but I was trying to break them up and thinking about like order of how they occurred. So we had some that were in the FY '24 original budget plan. We had some that we added in the override
Correct.
attempt. And then we have some that were FY '25 requests.
Yep.
And I was just trying to think from a kind of how long things have been waiting and discussed type thing. I don't think there was another one for any others in FY '24's original budget requests. Do you recall any?
Just those two.
Okay. And then for override, as you said, firefighter.
Yep.
I don't remember the title we used, the executive assistant.
Yeah, I think it was like
Town-
admin, executive assistant. We never actually
Something.
formalized it. That's what I wrote down. Something like that.
Okay.
And that was also part of the override.
Yep. Any others that were in the override? Those are the ones I remember. And then FY '25, we have a position in the assessing office. And increase in hours at the library. I believe it's hours.
It is ours.
And those latter two are,
Those numbers are in this current.
they're in this draft right now.
Yes.
So, right now we have moved a little bit in the positive on funding. I guess I'll put it out there. I think given the state of policing and police reform and all, and everything that has been transpiring over the last few years, regulatorily, and then I think it's almost 3 years now with, kind of phasing out part-time certified officers as a thing that we can have. And how difficult it has been to, acquire talent, right? The pool is smaller and smaller, and it's more and more competitive. I feel like we all felt strongly about the cadet program, and I don't know that we aren't going to see some significant impacts if we don't move forward and get that going. I mean, we're short-staffed, and maybe we wouldn't be, or at least we're helping get that pool back for everyone, right? I understand that may be a stepping stone, but we struggle to find capable people who are in the profession, and it is harder to get in now. So I think we need to be part of the towns who are helping to build that back up. So I feel strongly we need to put that back in. I think we were, I have a note there, about 65 combined, because we need academy. If we're going to do that, I feel like we have to raise the academy amount as well. And I would advocate for the highway position as well, being put in. Understand if we put those in and then start talking about benefits as well, we'll need to make some other adjustments. And I don't know if we want to adjust more on our local receipts based on the interest rate lock or any of that. Again, I know it's not a 3-year plan, it's a 9-month plan out into this year, but I think we had about 60 for that position.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thoughts, comments?
Just crunching some numbers here.
Jen, can I ask you to come up? I have a question. Oh, want you to look in your magic 8-ball. No, the benefits line, I know we've talked a lot about it. We believe we had some capacity, at least a few, maybe more. Depends on a lot of unknown potential elections. And you felt comfortable.
Yes.
Wish you convinced me thoroughly comfortable with where we were. How would you feel if there was 2 more benefit eligible positions in the budget?
2 additional. I mean, I think that would eliminate our cushion.
Completely? Or potentially?
Potentially. Again, there's just so much wiggle room with the potential of 8 people possibly or not taking benefits.
Right.
There's so much uncertainty there.
And it ranges from
That's like,
one
8
could
is
be
like $160,000, so I mean,
Right.
we could end up with multiple openings, if nobody decides to exercise their benefits.
Sure. And on the lowest level, you could have 2 plus people with the capacity of 1 full plan, right? Is it 1 to 2 to 1 or something like that?
We had basically, a buffer of about 2 people, so about an additional 40,000.
But the highest cost for the lowest cost options is basically double or more,
It's
is that
pretty huge,
right?
yes, yep.
So
So
at
yeah,
the
so
lowest
someone took a
level,
single plan, exactly.
right, a single
Exactly.
plan, 2
They
single
all took
plans
single
is just a single full plan, or 1 full plan in our numbers, right? Okay. Just in the idea that I'm advocating that we should add 2 that would be benefit eligible, where would that put us on the benefit side of this? Because those 125,000 doesn't talk about the benefit side, so.
I wish I had a better answer for you.
No, like I said, it's a magic 8-ball, right? I think we had 8, now we have 9, because we know the school's adding 1 more, and then, this would be 11. So I think the more we add, the more you potentially have.
Well, you are losing a preschool teacher? So
That's already worked into the worksheet.
But not the
but
benefit
not the
side.
benefit side, so we wouldn't have to add in for both.
So that one we had been adding is a wash.
Correct.
That's right, they did say that in the meeting.
So that would, yeah.
Well, so to be clear, what they said in the meeting was it's
The classroom, not the people.
the classroom, not the people. If the administration wanted to repurpose the individual and keep them unstaffed, they have that purview to do so.
Correct.
Right.
So we wouldn't
So we
know
don't know
until
for
sometime
sure.
after
Right.
June 30th when they make their decision.
Yep. I know they're in the maybe if column, we don't know.
Yeah,
right?
we don't know.
It's another question mark in the
Right.
formula, right?
Yep.
So, okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the benefits right now? Will I have her up here?
My only thought was, if we're adding this back in, do we add to that line item to make sure we have the capacity?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
That's why I asked, you
Right.
know, if we're talking about, I mean, I think what is now up to about 11 positions, benefit eligible, that we're budgeting for at full, and right now are 0. It feels like that should give us some capacity no matter what. The odds are not that we'll have 100% family plans for 11 people.
Right.
So even a couple that don't, or a couple that elect singles, will give us a position or two of capacity, of unexpected capacity. And we operated this year at a deficit of 3, I believe.
If we needed
Somehow.
to allocate something at the June special meeting, I'll know by then. I don't know if that's an option, if you wanted to think about it in the back of your mind.
I mean, we'd have to find money somewhere else if we didn't budget for it, because there won't be,
Right.
at least proposed, there won't be free cash either, so. But that doesn't mean we can't do a transfer from somewhere else.
Okay.
It's good to know. Thank you. I know you were crunching numbers. Anybody have anything else or comments or questions while some of us are crunching numbers here? For, against? Let's figure it out. Don't think we should figure it out. Don't agree? I understand we're starting from a premise we all supported these things, so we all thought they
Yes.
belong. I
They-
get that. Now we're at how would we do them with the money we have if they're that important? Just to put that on there. I'm not saying people are against them. I'm saying, are we in favor of trying to fit them in anyway at this point and getting there?
If it was my decision, and it's not, I would prefer that we make them top priorities for next year rather than shoehorn them in this year. But that's, I mean, we've already balanced. That would be what I would say. But
Well, and after the ed adjustments and others were positive, we have, I think I was at 65 or 90 last time I looked. I just messed with it, so.
So I have us at positive $67,891.
Oh, that's right. I didn't adjust the free cash one down to 748 or whatever it is. Okay.
I have thoughts if you are
Yeah,
open
please.
to them.
The floor is open.
So we had thrown around the idea of the other special articles. We hadn't touched it. I think you brought it up first thing, saying what did we come up with, the 318. After hearing the treasurer talk about locking in the 4% at least through April of next year, I think that gives us some stability at least for FY25 to know that if we were to increase that number a little bit, and I'm not talking a lot because I'd like to do a combination of stepping up the receipts, but also stepping down OPEB just a little bit for the 1 year, with the caveat that should these receipts stay at a sustainable rate that they are beyond April of next year, that we make sure we make whole on things like OPEB, overlay, the things that we've cut to make this balance. If that revenue does prove itself to be a long-standing revenue source that we can keep in our summary and keep utilizing year after year, then we make sure we make those whole going forward. Having said that, if you were to increase local receipts to 430, decrease the other special articles from 318 to 268, which is 50,000 out of OPEB. And I looked at the two positions. It's 125, and I added in one more full benefit package, and it puts it at $146,000 added. You do those three mechanisms, and you end up with a whopping surplus of $1,891 to the FY25 fiscal budget.
Scott, what was your number again you had for both positions plus Benny's?
146. I used 60,000 for the operator, 65 for the public safety, and 21 for another benefit package.
But you didn't include academy into that number.
That 65 is inclusive
That
of.
does include the academy.
It's 50 for the
50
cadet
50
and
and
about
15.
15 to send them to the academy once they complete the cadet program.
Okay.
Yeah, and that may be and/or equipment, we can flush out the exact.
Yeah,
We can put it in that way and adjust it
correct.
for actuals if needed. What did you do for local receipts?
430, just increased at another 30,000. And I know there's more wiggle room in that. I think we were all talking about, you threw out the number that could be sustainable at 500,000, so.
I did 4 months at nine, I mean, just a real rough ballpark of 9 months at 4% and no more interest, and we'd be at 500.
Right.
Just in the interest.
Right.
Or,
And so-
I'm sorry,
So I felt,
in the last year receipt budgeted amount, or what we started with, the 240 plus the interest would be at 5 plus.
correct.
Just assuming we had nothing for the rest of the year, which
Yeah.
is highly unlikely, so.
And so if people feel really strongly that that number, it's all about, it's a gut feeling on whether or not we feel that number is A, reliable, and B, sustainable. Well, we know it's sustainable for at least 12 months, 9 months of the next fiscal year, and we're not using that money, it's not budgeted for FY24 now, so it's just building. So it goes in as one other resource. So if people feel they're comfortable with that and they don't want to reduce things like OPEB or overlay, and they're more comfortable with increasing the local receipts, we can play with those numbers. It's just about presentation and how comfortable we are in that income source. I was trying to give it 1 year to see where we're at in April of next year. Maybe start having that conversation in February about the pending end of the guaranteed 4%, and while we're in the midst of next year's budget cycle, maybe extend it for another 5 years.
And that's assuming we keep in the requested changes this year, and we'll come back to the other two positions
Well-
in a future year.
You're talking about the other two as in fire and yes.
Admin.
Yeah. And with you, I had them flip-flop myself. I had the highway first, then police, but they were simultaneous
yeah,
because
okay.
to me, they were both the priority because they were FY24 original requests that we end up cutting from the budget that everybody was in favor for FY24. So I had the same, triage of events and then listed down the other ones that were the same reasoning, that were denied at the override, that were discussed by us but then not put forward because of budgetary restraints. So
I guess for me, I'm a little torn on the FY25 increases because we did specifically request levelly funded budgets. So those aren't levelly funded budgets. And we're making all these other cuts to other areas, but we haven't even discussed and talked about those. And to me, if we're going back and we're simply just beginning to talk about positions that were requested back for the FY24 budget, I don't personally feel good about then including positions for the FY25 and skipping over other positions that have been waiting longer. I understand that there is a need. I firmly believe that any one of these department heads that we've talked about tonight could come up and justify why they need their position. There is a need in every department. No one is more important than the next. So I just struggle with those remaining in the budget for right now. Because for me personally, that isn't what we asked for. Levelly funded budgets are levelly funded budgets. To me, even the pay increases, when you levelly fund a budget, you find a way to work that pay increase into your budget. If you have to cut other things, you have to cut other things. So we already kind of twist the definition of a levelly funded budget to begin with.
Do we say levelly funded or levelly serviced?
Level funded,
Yeah, our budget message was level funded.
yeah.
I believe I heard the school talking about level service, but the town requested level funded from all departments.
Could I ask if there are representatives here from the couple of places that requested roughly 10,000 above a level fund, if you might ask them to explain the reasons why? I suppose I could turn and say, everybody comes in, we're here for weeks talking about why you need this, that, or the other, but when we're looking at police, fire, cadets, those things, and highway operators, we're looking at 60, 65,000 plus benefits, comes up to maybe 150 grand for a couple of them. And these other things are, in one case, I believe just very good business to prepare. We have a principal assessor who's going to retire and absolutely must be replaced. Either be replaced with someone who's trained to do it by the principal assessor, or the options of trying to hire out somebody to do it is way more expensive than what we've got. So looks like good business to invest 10 grand. I'll let probably Jackie could explain that far better than I might. And the other one is the library, and we built the library telling people would come. And instead of a few hundred, we have thousands coming, which is great. But, you know, they're not requesting, I guess, 5-6 hours, not whole new people or new benefits and stuff, I believe. I think they should be given an opportunity to explain why it is they need those couple of things, but it's up to you.
Well, I have to ask, are you advocating as a member of each of those boards and committees? Because, I mean, you're speaking for two that you're part of. And so it sounds like you're explaining and justifying them to me, and I just want to be clear which role you're sitting there with right now.
No, I'm sitting here as finance. I've not said one word that I'm aware of that would financially benefit me or my family or anybody in any way. I've asked for if you would do the courtesy of the people who came to the meeting, they're here, and let them explain it. It's up to you. You don't have to. Like I said, it could turn into every department saying, well, why don't I come up and talk for half an hour? Not advocating for that, but it's up to you.
I'm just asking. Normally you recuse on those budgets in general, so I just wanted to be clear. Appreciate your clarity. I have no problem with it, but I guess I would ask, we went through that in the discussion when the budgets were presented. I think it was in the narrative, so are there further questions, or do we want to hear that again tonight?
Need a minute to
Yep, that's fine.
gather some thoughts.
Anyone else?
I've been ruminating, and again, going back to my question about level funded or level servicing, and balancing that against the sentiment of the taxpayers at our STMs at the override, there were a lot of people that made the message loud and clear that they wanted us to reel back. Whether I agree with that personally or not, we represent the people as a whole and the wishes of the town. Now, as much as I appreciate the guaranteed fixed interest rate and the additional revenue and all that, I'm leaning more towards agreeing with Ben's sentiment of we can make these a priority in the 26 budget planning to revisit the need. Different department heads came up and made presentations. Chief Holst did say that, yes, he would like this, but he believed we could get by without it for another year. I guess Mr. McCrory maybe stepped out.
So, Jim, not to put you on the spot, so are you thinking no new positions, no increases, keeping it as it is, or are you leaning more towards?
Well, like you said, what we asked for, and the department heads worked really hard to deliver what we requested, and understanding what the people have voiced. Now, I also recognize several meetings back, I kept joking that our principal assessor's not retiring for another 4 years and 5 years, and I kept extending her career out. I recommend that is just wishful thinking on my part, and I can't manifest that. And I would say that is a critical need worthy of reconsideration. But I am inclined to sit on the others.
I don't know. I proposed them. I think we should do them now. So I think understand what Chief said, and I also know, he didn't put it in his request because we said not to. Him and I spoke about that many a time. Same with, Highway had kind of pulled that. They were just about ready to make an offer to somebody last. And then because of the financial situation, we're all sitting there, we know, we pulled it. I look back and we've been almost a year with, or we're closing in on, 9-10 months without a full department and police, and I hope we are able to find someone and fill that before this fiscal year ends. But if we don't, we'll be getting near 12 months without having a full staff, and we know what kind of toll that takes. And I feel like this is a path towards trying to add some of that stability and reliability of having, hopefully, close to a full staff all the time. So I struggle with that being passed over again. I know we talked about what are options for revenue generation. So not only do I think, yes, we asked for, and I reread the message, maybe it wasn't as clear, but I know in the meetings we were very clear. We asked for level funded, not level service. I didn't see I think I only saw maybe one department that level funded wages. And we didn't say level fund them, don't increase them beyond the steps or anything. We said level funded. And then we have, on the other end where some have requested increases. So I think, I'm not saying we be consistent everywhere. We understand that there's different reasons that people brought different numbers. And I know there wasn't maybe as much clarity because we made adjustments and haven't shifted some of those funds over. So they look more than they really are. But we also talked about, well, to your point, the voters were clear about trying not to keep raising and raising and raising or expanding the limit. So we talked about options for generating revenue. We got some high-level proposals, but haven't, that I recall, talked about actually doing any of them. And they're the other way that we subsidize this, Do we start charging for trash? I mean, it's 650 households, 52 weeks a year. I mean, a few dollars adds up pretty fast. $2 a week is $67,000 or, you're guessing, but it can add up pretty quick. So, and I'm not saying we start at something that's $2 a bag, but, there are some ways that we could start generating revenue. We also have, some groups have revolving funds and such that are not necessarily calculated into their budgets in full. So, we have others who are cutting their budgets to try to keep things going, and others who aren't using all of the money at their disposal to keep their budgets low. So I struggle with the idea that not doing those things, it makes sense to not find these positions at the same time.
All very compelling arguments. And
Yeah, I mean, they're just
Like-
one perspective.
like Deb said, I too find myself torn, and I won't take back what I said a couple of minutes ago, but I
understand.
I think, for me, the only question I have is on the cadet program, is if we have a full staff and we have a cadet, what is that person's role post? Do they stay a cadet for 4 years because we don't have a position open up? Like, what is that? And Chief may have explained this when he first presented it, so I apologize if he did, but it has been so long since we talked about it, I don't recall what.
So the proposal as it stood, and we discussed that, what happens if somebody graduates the cadet program, goes to the full-time academy, becomes a police officer, is they have a cushion, they have a seventh person. The idea that would last, the turnover is always going to be there, whether the attrition is always going to happen. This is planning for that attrition to happen so that when they do leave, you're back down to your minimum, which would be your 6. You can take a breath. You can find somebody else for the cadet program. You can put them through the process of being a cadet again, getting trained, going. You don't have to rush them into the next academy. It can be, a year down the road, and you're prepping yourself for the next time somebody leaves. So
Okay.
Yeah, the idea would be you would fluctuate between 6 or 7, depending on if they're a cadet or if they're an officer.
And maybe just to expand on that, so they're a cadet, probably, hopefully within 12 months, they've gone through the academy, they've done, field training, and they're effectively a, full status patrol officer at the same time. But they're still in that cadet bucket. As long as we have 6 other officers, it will allow, double coverage on shifts. It will allow some expanded coverage hours, some other things that we could do for that period of time, for as long as that is.
Okay.
If we would not, I think the discussion was we would not make that like a permanent new schedule. It would be the ability to have an additional person in different places on the schedule. We would still operate on the 6, on the standard department staff schedule that we have of 6 full-time, including the chief, staff. So that if that went away and we had to backfill and do a new cadet. We're not, now with a gap, we just don't have that extra coverage, so.
Something I don't recall if I asked or not. The cadet program, is that an annual program or an as-needed program? I guess the question that I'm trying to get to is, let's say that we send somebody through the cadet program, we go from 6 to 7, and nobody leaves for a year. Do we have another cadet the following year? So it's not an annual program.
As needed.
It's an ad hoc.
It's a budget, it's a recurring budget cost that is either funding someone new if we don't have 7 people, or is continuing to fund an existing cadet that has been or is in the program already. So if we have a cadet, they're fully trained, they've been on for a year plus, and now they're full status, you know, if you will, fully certified and everything, and we don't have any attrition, then the cadet line will stay in the budget, will continue to pay their salary while they operate as a fully trained officer. If we have attrition, then they'll move into, you know, the regular police wages, if you will, and the cadet funding would go fund a new cadet. Does that make sense? It's not a one-time funding, but it isn't a
Right.
new cadet every year. It's a
Right.
cadet when we
It's
don't
not
have a cadet
recurring.
in the position,
Right.
if you will.
Okay.
And a cadet doesn't necessarily mean they haven't already done all the work, because if they do and we have a staff that's solid and keeps staying every year, then we'll just keep with that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
I still haven't changed my mind though.
That's okay. We need to, I mean, you know, I wish we had the luxury of time. If we wanted it to continue to think these over, we do have to come to a decision tonight, whatever that may be. You know, I see us being able to get there, including the couple requests this year, if we want to keep those in, with, you know, with what Scott offered. There's other ways to get there that I had looked at. Though I feel strongly about the positions that we brought during the override discussion, I also know that we were attempting to have a conversation about what is 3 to 5 years sustainably, not necessarily just what is needed right that minute. And while I think they're important, I think we could look at those as priorities for FY26. My take on the other two, assessing, I know they're not a ton of money, but they're still all drivers for an increased budget. Assessing, I don't recall, and I don't want to put someone on the spot on what the date is, but I think it's beyond FY25. I
For
could be
their
wrong.
narrative, it's 24 to 36 months.
She might have some clarity.
If you would like to add clarity, please come up. It is, you don't have to. I want to be respectful of you as that person as well, so.
Okay, so when I put the budget together, I hadn't heard from the retirement board. I've since heard from the retirement board. My retirement date is December 31st of 2025. I will remind you that I put the assessor's clerk in the 2.5 override proposition. It's not like it's been new.
Can we hold for 1 second?
Yes.
Nothing against Jackie, but we haven't said that department heads could start justifying, excuse me, these needs yet.
No, we didn't.
So
We
I-
asked to talk about a date.
So,
I'm just trying to
we'll
be fair to everybody.
so my retirement date is in about 20 months, give or take. I have a substantial amount of vacation time to use up. I have a substantial amount of other time. I didn't deliberately put in for an assistant assessor position as a succession plan. I put in the clerk instead, which is a cheaper option. It's less expensive, knowing that, although this is justification, that I could train somebody. So I'm out of here in 20 months. If you don't fund this clerk, that's okay, my life continues. But I was looking out for the best interest of the town, and that's why in my justification of the budget, it was in the narrative.
Thank you.
When I sent you those new numbers on your debt exclusion.
Can I just go up and ask a question?
Yeah, if you have a question, come up.
Hi.
Hi.
This is the second week that the department heads have asked to be here on Monday night, and I'm just wondering what the schedule is and how long you anticipate needing us here tonight.
We are going to discuss this until we come to a decision because this has to be finalized tonight, this group.
Can you give me a time range, please?
I can't tell you how long we're going to decide to deliberate. We asked everyone to come so that they're here if they have questions or want to hear what we're doing and changing potentially. We didn't say anyone had to, so if you need to leave.
Last time I left, there were comments afterwards, so I'll be sticking around, but please note my question.
I can't control when someone leaves. Our meeting was not over, so I'm sorry that you weren't here when comments were made, but that's not something that we control. It's very clear when our meetings are over. So, I know said you were looking at some things. Did you have something you wanted to add or no? I'm not.
I've just gone back and forth, listening to it's basically the inner dialogue that's been happening in my head played out on from two or three different people because I've been, sitting on both sides of that. I hear the arguments for the request that we made of everybody for level funded budgets, but that also doesn't, that by making that request, it's so that we can ensure that we come within a budget that we can sustain. That doesn't stop us from being able to adjust the budget as we see fit once those are submitted. So I know it's, it's semantics, but we're asking for, when we ask for a level funded, it's to ensure that we can meet those goals. If we feel that we've actually got the capacity to increase, that's our prerogative to do so, or decrease, should we see fit. With that being said, I also, I threw those numbers out there of saying, if you add the two staff and the one benefit of 21 and the 146, and then trying to find a way to decrease. I'm not sold on that being the way we need to go this year. I think, I've heard from a couple of people that while it is a need and it is a driver, I don't know if it's to a point where it is necessary for FY25 to open the budget by putting those in there. We could very simply reduce the new growth to the 12,000. We leave all of the other numbers where they were. We adjust the school, and we end up with the 67,000 and change surplus, and you leave it as that.
Which will just end up in the overlay.
In which we had cut down from
Because
200.
it won't change, it won't reduce the tax rate because we know it'll go in the overlay.
Correct.
So,
And so, you balance it now by putting it in the overlay or don't. It doesn't really matter. That's where it's going to end up anyways. But you're balanced. And we wait for a year. We see what happens in next February, March, and early April. Well, hopefully not early April. Hopefully we have this budget wrapped up before then. But February and March, we see about the future sustainability of the new growth, and as well as local receipts. And if that is a sustainable piece that we can then feel very reliable on of increasing that from the current 400 to say 5 or 550, because we found out that that really is the true reliable number. Now we're working with real numbers, and we're not working with something that just happened 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago. So I would lean towards dropping the new growth to 12,000 and dropping the school budget as they amended it last Wednesday, and having a balanced budget at $14,244,736.
And since I brought them up and others offered ways to get there, which I appreciate, and hearing everything tonight, I did make some adjustments because obviously the new growth, et cetera, but here's what my proposal was that covered those, and it did include the requests for this year in there. The new growth down to 12, the overlay down to 90, which allows the capacity for the assessing position. Still well above the approximate anticipated annual need from last week's discussion. And then local receipts up to 450, so 50,000 increase. We were at 370 this year. That's with none of the interest changes. So that's only anticipating, say, $80,000 of increased receipts, which is a fraction of what we'll probably get in interest. Even at 2%, it's a fraction of what we get in interest. From where we've been, because we were well below that. And then no change to OPEB. 65 for cadet, 60 for highway for an operator. Change to the education budget. No change to the benefits. Puts us at 14,370, 626 with a $2,000 surplus. My capital stabilization number is probably wrong. Who has the right one?
747, 110.
Thank you. So make it 2891. Was my bottom line.
And the one I threw out there before was 1891. So we're
It's right in the same place. It's just kind of where you pulled off OPEB and some others, and I just added 50 to local receipts and 10 out of it overlay to get there. So just to put numbers to it on how I would get there. And it gets a fraction of those, and I don't feel like it gets us, I don't think it's using things we don't have that are sustainable, that are not sustainable.
I agree on one hand. Scott, to your comment, I kind of disagree a bit in principle. When a department head turns in what I'm expecting to be a levelly funded budget, I expect a levelly funded budget. And if they have a need for a position, I expect to see that in the description and more as a request, not automatically put in and factored in, because to me, then they're not presenting what they're being asked to present. And I guess that might be on us for not kicking that back to those departments and saying, you didn't present a levelly funded budget as you were asked to. And so maybe a note for future, because I know Finance Committee talked about it, and there was a couple different views of what levelly funded is. School committee was levelly serviced. I think it's a hard one for me because I'm looking at it from a standpoint of my understanding of the request was a levelly funded budget. Hearing that our assessor has a firm retirement date, I would leave that position in the budget, because I do think if we didn't, that gives them less than 6 months to hire, and I suspect that that is going to be an incredibly difficult position to fill. I understand that the library has a need for additional hours. I have a hard time justifying that. I know it is only $10,000, but I struggle with justifying that over public safety positions. I kind of feel like we're just trying to play with all the numbers to make things work, and on some level, I feel like we're kind of building a house of cards.
I may be the minority voice here, but I advocated for some amount of flexibility to meet needs. I appreciate what the chair says and what you folks have said, because I believe somebody retiring is sort of out of the ordinary. And I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't like the public safety or put out your fire when, when the house is on fire. Well, we like all that stuff. We don't always here speaking against any of that stuff. I just advocate for a little more flexibility to meet what people need. And there was one time when Selectman Loyne and I had a brief discussion in a meeting here, and something was, I don't know, 12, 15%, but yeah, 12, 15% of what? The whole thing coming to $150 or something. Wasn't a giant budget. So I advocate for just some flexibility as we go through these things. And generally, that's my position.
I think my issue on the library one isn't so much the hours or the amount of the change for this year. It's the fact that we come in with a deficit because there were changes made that were not funded in the prior year by the library trustees. And then the carry forward is that that's still not funded. It's expected to be an increase. Because if that didn't happen, there would be no increase to get those hours, because the budget would already have that. So
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you meant, just financially.
the library trustees made changes to the wages of the staff mid-year, which were not part of the budget in FY '23. So that were unfunded or were found from other places in the budget, but that wasn't what was reflected in the request for '24. Do I have the wrong year? Maybe that was in '24. No, that's the current year. They weren't reflected in, they weren't adjustments where we shifted money from somewhere else to keep them funded. They were instead requests to increase last year. So then there's another increase request this year. My point being, if you balanced the changes made within the budget you had in the prior year, then the increase last year would have gotten you these hours already. So it's just another increase, and that's where I struggle. And it's not about percentages, it's just that we have to look at all of them and figure out where to, make them all fit in the budget.
Okay. No, I certainly understand that our tasks here are not easy, and they're complex, they're all interrelated, and that's fine. I have no anger or discontent toward anyone. But I would like to say that the changes made last year were legally required. I mean, we're required, when we have any staff member who says, here's my job description, but that's not what I'm doing. This is what you hire me to do, and this is what you're paying me to do. This is what I'm actually doing. So we went with legal counsel on through the whole process, so that we're meeting the legal requirements of paying people for what they're actually doing. Not, you hire somebody to take out the trash, and all of a sudden they're painting the building. You have to make those adjustments. So those are legally required things we had to do, not just, we just felt like paying somebody more money. Just to be clear. Okay.
That's fair, yeah, and I wasn't contemplating the why or the validity of the change. That's not at all what I meant. It was not something we were part of. It wasn't something that I don't believe the financial team discussed. It wasn't ours. The trustees handled the situation and made the changes they needed to. What I'm saying is that those were absorbed within the budget that year somehow, because there was no request for additional funding. So, but they were then incorporated into a request for an increase in the following year. So it's cascaded, right? Instead of continuing to find it within the budget,
Yeah,
it was increased.
I don't recall how the funding was.
Sure. There was a $15,000 $18,000 salary increase last year. And then we're looking at another 28 requested, and some of that is a reduction in other areas. Well, no, I guess that is what the bottom line is.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's another 30. So it's more than double what was requested last year to increase. So that's in a year where we were decreasing everybody else's budgets last year. So that's all. I'm just trying to balance it all. It's obviously not easy, and it's not about not wanting to provide all the services we'd like to provide everything. so. Anyway, someone wants to put together a motion or something to move forward from here. We've had a lot of discussion about it, but I mean, I can do one, but I would rather someone else did. If you have something you want to put out there that we all can come to and decide if we want to do. Unless you have a different way you want to get there.
Just to be clear, the increase to the library was included in the FY24 request, correct?
The one that I was talking about, the wage adjustment in '23?
Has been rolled into 24 and then subsequently part of 25's request. So it's in the numbers that we're seeing now. There's no.
Yeah, no.
It's not like the assessor's
24
request of saying, additionally, here's my budget request, but additionally, if you're so inclined, I would like to have another position.
The rate changes are reflected in the FY25 budget. It's
They were
additional-
reflected in.
Is a request for additional hours for one of the positions. That's also embedded in the library's request.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get at, the 10 hours, 12 hours,
The
whatever it
salary
was.
adjustments in '23
Yeah,
were
yeah,
in the '24
yeah.
budget. They are in the '25 budget. The request above that is the 28K.
So, I have a question. If the library has a state aid fund, is there a reason why state aid can't be factored into their budget, and then thus they can find this funding within their budget for this increase?
Could we ask the director to answer the question, because I don't know the answer.
Sure, absolutely.
Could you answer that, Abby?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Okay, would you?
Sure,
I
the
won't
library has state
paraphrase.
aid. So that is not, unless I'm missing it here, I'm not seeing it reflected in your budget as being spent. So is there a reason why state aid can't be factored into your budget as a funding source, thus giving you a little bit of flexibility to potentially find funding for that increase within your budget?
I believe you're talking about the grant-funded money that comes from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners each year, which is not a guaranteed source of funding.
But you get it every year.
But it's an anticipated source.
It's an anticipated source of funding.
Yes, an anticipated source of funding that goes into a separately managed account. Because it is special revenue account, not an operating
Right, and it's
account.
meant for the library to spend.
Correct.
So what do you traditionally spend that funding on?
Well, I've only been here for 2 years, so I can only reflect on those 2 years. It's been used to support programming, electricity bills that weren't covered in other ways, technology that we need for the library, substitute staffing funds when we don't have those funds otherwise. So it is the account that the library relies on. We've replaced door hardware maintenance on it. It's the way that we don't ask the town for more money. And I'd be happy to present those figures in more detail if needed.
Okay.
How much is that annually, roughly?
It's not a specific amount. The state gets a pool of money that is distributed based on certain factors, including the number of hours that a library is open, and some other things that I don't have off the top of my head, sorry. So the recent calculations have been about $3,000 to $5,000 per year.
And maybe for some clarity, I think we talked more about them this year than last year, but even last year. And the elementary school has done a lot to try to incorporate the anticipated or projected numbers into their funding instead of being as conservative or not including some of them, and therefore we end up taxing for more than needed. Same same principle here, right? Well, discussions about revolving funds and about grant funds. We don't always talk about those in our funding. And how could we, or how should we, or do we to make sure we have a clearer picture of how we can fund things without all reliance on raise and appropriate.
I think if those instructions were given to the department heads, I'd be happy to provide that information.
Appreciate that. I wasn't, yeah, I'm not saying that we didn't give that instruction, just as an example. Other questions for Abby while she's up here?
No, but I just want to clarify, because Abby brought up, I was the one who made comments after you left last meeting. Just for clarity, I don't know what you were told. I was asking for things to be discussed tonight. I was not attempting to discuss anything last week. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So whether you were here or not, I was just asking for agenda items.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have the request in front of me. Is there a dollar amount attached to the narrative request for the assessor's clerk?
10,754.
Thank you.
Because I don't seem to have that detail in front of me, although I'm scrolling through it right here and I'm probably just missing it. How much did we put in? So last year, I think it was last year, the Recreation Commission asked us to put their surplus fees they hadn't used for their budget because they can't keep over 10,000, I think it is, in their revolving account. So we didn't fund from revenues. And they wanted to put into a special article. Do we have that number somewhere handy?
I believe it was 18, but I can double check.
It was 18.
Did you say 8?
18.
18.
We did that at the June special.
And do we, I feel like there was some discussion or comment
18.
that there would be more again this year that would be requested to do the same. If you want to speak to that, please come up. Thank you, Jackie.
It is our intent to use the excess from the revolving account to make that a self-funding account for our park maintenance that exceeds, so that we don't have to go to capital for those repairs. Maybe we'll get enough in there for new playground equipment that can run up to 100,000, and then we can use that instead of asking for capital. It's a relatively new concept for the Recreation Commission, but that is our intent, to use that continuing appropriation that way to fund our large projects and not come to capital for them. There's no other way for us to do that sort of thing, so that's how they were looking at it.
Sounds.
Well, that was the intent of the article, so.
No,
Yeah.
Well, one time, maybe I guess and going back, I don't recall the conversation then. Maybe I didn't think about it at that point. Those are, for me, that's capital items, and they should go to capital, or it's circumventing the capital process. So I don't understand why we would save money in another. One of the things that we've over the years been trying to, from what I recall, from a continuous process improvement standpoint, was get away from all of these various different articles to try to stabilize whatever costs and expenses we had, and instead say we have one for capital, we have operating costs, let's make sure things fall into those buckets. And we moved some costs into operating that we used to try to stabilize and just budget them every year, and we moved other ones into capital and created the capital stabilization. So it feels, I don't know, it feels like it's trying to get around that.
It wasn't the intent to get around it. It was, the thought was that a capital project has to be 5,000 or more. hypothetical example would be our swing set gets vandalized and broken. That's under the $5,000 threshold, but we don't have that kind of funding to replace a whole swing set, like that sort of thing. So that's where we would go into it.
Okay, hang on. Yeah,
I was going to
please.
say, one swing set purchase is going to be more than $5,000.
It's pretty pricey. 5 little plastic artificial logs was $8,000.
So that's what I'm saying. You're saying to dip into this fund.
It might be a swing. So say we have one of the swing that's.
Jackie, can you let her finish,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, then
Out the window.
I'm gonna say something because I thought you were gonna say it. That's why I want to make sure you finish your thought. You just said they don't raise to the level of capital, and then just said they do. And originally you said we're putting this away for $100,000 equipment purchases. So a little vandalism that's not $5,000, but then you said it could be 8 or more. Now I'm confused. Are you saying it is or isn't maintenance or capital?
A lot, and I'm not the playground cost expert.
That's
I've only been doing this for about a year. Some equipment is under the $5,000 threshold. It depends on what it is. Some of it is over the $5,000 threshold, again, depending on what it is. And there's not a rhyme or reason on what it is and what it costs. I use the example of the 4 little logs that we were going to replace at Riverfront because I was amazed that 4 little logs was going to cost $8,000. I mean, it was just like, are you kidding me? So that was, and maybe it was a poor example to use, but one of our swings that we have at Hammock Park is, it's kind of like a dual purpose swing. That's very expensive to replace. Would it meet the $5,000 threshold? Probably not, or parts to replace it. That's where we might use that account. It's still relatively new, and I understand from your references today about the revolving account, the Recreation hasn't done a very good job of dipping into that, but we will be with moving forward with Veterans Field because we're going to deplete what we have in the park maintenance line out of this year with the highway taking out the tennis courts and the fences. That's going to wipe that account out. So this year we will dip into the revolving account for the survey costs. I'm not sure what they are yet, but definitely they'll have to come out of the revolving. The same thing with the survey of Zielinski Field. That will have to come out of the revolving. We're keeping a better eye on what is in the revolving, and we're trying to do a better job with the new budget system of keeping track of what each of our activities/sports or summer park program cost. It's not been ideal the past few years, but we had a period where we didn't have a very active recreation commission. We have 4 members that are very active and a really good recreation assistant, and we're moving forward trying to be more accountable. So, and go ahead.
So there's just some things, and we don't have to solve them all tonight, but it seems inconsistent for me, and maybe I'm just not following, but we put money into a stabilization account to account for those maintenance costs that are maybe capital, maybe not, that aren't in the budget in that year. And you just noted some, but you talked about taking them out of this year's revolving, not out of that stabilization or that special article that you created.
Well, it was my understanding that it's your desire to spend down the revolving account first, and then we would dip into the continuing appropriation. If that's different than what the financial part, then we can do it the other way around. But the intent of the article last June was to save a little money to use mostly towards Veterans Field reconstruction or maybe matching the park grant. We were trying to be fiscally responsible with the extra money from the revolving account. And it could have gone back to the general fund, but we were thinking long-term what we have ahead and a way to not circumvent the capital project, but a way to bring money to the table. If the park grant is, I don't know, $500,000, we have to match that. We could say, much like they did with the library, okay, we've saved this much money for that. This will go along with our capital requests. when you make a capital request, it's often asked where you're going to get additional funding from. Do you have a funding source? We were trying to create one internally using our revolving account extra. If there will be any this year, I don't know, because we are going to spend some of it. Does that
Okay.
clarify it a little?
Kind of, yes. I think to the beginning thing you said, though, I
Oh,
wasn't.
I'm sorry, I
I wasn't
used it.
trying to, no, just what you just said now. I wasn't trying to say it should or shouldn't be spent from one or the other. I think the premise of the question to start with was just coming from we're not using it to operate the program. We're having a surplus that's even beyond what it can carry year to year that we put somewhere last year. Will we this year? I don't know the answer to that, and I wasn't assuming we would, but if we are, then we're not using that to offset operating budget. And so that's why I was asking, and if the purpose of that is to try to save it to put aside for capital later, I think the capital's here, so I'd ask their thoughts. I, as a capital member, don't think that's what we would want done. But I don't know what capital thinks, outside of myself.
I will say, I'm not sure how deep we'll go into the revolving account this year for Summer Park. We did up the fees considerably, but we had to hire an additional counselor due to safety regulations. We budgeted to rent a tent. I will tell you that the rental number came in less than we anticipated, which was a good thing. We're going to look hard at part of Summer Park costs, a big part of it is the wages. The other big part is the cost of the buses to take the children for their bus trip to Laurel Lake. Those I know, will be higher than they were. We're going to keep a better eye on this particular year on what we're spending and where it's going. I hate to keep saying give us a little more time, but it's been a learning experience for everyone to keep track of exactly what we're spending our money on or not spending our money on.
Understood. I appreciate the detail, but I don't think that's kind of
Sorry.
where we're trying to go. I just, not to extend the meeting, I'm trying to more high level to the other capital planning members. If that's the direction we'd want to go, because we should know that.
So I'm going to just speak for myself. I think we're getting bogged down on this one particular thing. And I think it's a much broader conversation than what any of us are prepared to have tonight. We only have Jackie, we don't have the full rec board. So I think that would be something that maybe we can, what is the expression, put it in the parking lot and come back to and have a joint meeting potentially with,
Future
and have the
meeting
full
topic,
rec board here.
yes.
That way we can ask rec to bring all of the dollar amounts and what they have, and they can get square on what their intent is, and capital would be able to talk about it and just have it as a meeting down the road, maybe after the annual town meeting, please.
Yes. That's fair.
We
No,
look
that's fair.
forward to
I
that
appreciate
discussion.
that.
We do.
No, I appreciate that. You're right. Maybe in summary, the one question, if you know off the top of your head to answer, based on what you do know and how the budget was crafted for the FY25 request, was there any change in how much revolving account was planned to be used from the prior year, or from, how it's been done in the past? Understanding you don't maybe have as much detail as you'd like, but do you know, did you guys plan to add more or use more from there or not?
We plan to use it first, well, not first. So we've crafted a budget, and we've outlined what we feel is going to, we know that last year we got $15,000 in the revolving account from the registrations. So when that money comes in, that money would be put towards the summer park program. That's one of the new changes, is keeping track of what's coming in for what program. So we know that last year it was $15,000, so that will go mostly towards wages, to be honest. And it'll go into revolving, but that's how we'll pay it out, and that's how we have the line item designed in the new budget system, that will take it out of that. So yes, we plan on using that.
And I appreciate the process change. What I'm asking is in the budget plan, did you plan to use more revolving than you did in the prior year?
Yes. I know we will, yes.
But is that how it's budgeted? That's what I'm
Yes,
asking.
it is how-
If you budgeted, if you used plan to use 20,000 last year, you plan to use more than 20 this year or not, is all I'm asking. I'm using arbitrary numbers, but
Last year, it wasn't kept track of like it should have been for that, so I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that moving forward, this year, for this fiscal year '24 budget, we are keeping closer track of everything that we're spending and allocating it properly.
okay, thank you. I'm sure we all want to continue on to the rest of the business and move on tonight, so does anyone have a proposal on what the final budget is?
I'm still
Or
trying
do you
to,
want me to put something out there? I don't know. I don't want to keep just sitting here belaboring it. There's only, been a few of us who've talked about it and the rest
Yep.
haven't. And I don't know if that means they have a different preference or they're
Yes.
fine with all these options. So we need to figure out a way to get to a decision tonight, sooner than later.
so. Just going back to the numbers you rattled off before, you said change new growth from what is currently 0 to 12?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And then you said change the overlay to
To 90.
90?
Yep, minus 90.
Which is from last week's conversation down 10. And then local receipts, I had said 450. We were at 4 last week, I believe. And then I adjusted public safety by 60, I increased it by 65K. And public works by 60K, which is the two positions. And then I made the education adjustment that was approved last week. Or recommended by the school board. but-
Sorry, Jake, did you say you adjusted general government?
No. Public safety, education, and public works.
So, public safety would now be 1269849.
Correct, that's what I had, yep. And then
Public works is 824.
I got 834,
8344.
60K.
60.
Yeah, not 50, I keep misspeaking, it's 60,
834472.
yes. And that brought me for revenues to 14372,627. And for revenues,
Double check that, because I don't think it's adding in the 12.
hang on, oh.
The sum total, it was never having it as part of the formula.
Yeah,
It is in mine.
It is? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
14372,627.
total revenue.
Yep,
What's
Yep.
that?
for total revenues, yes.
Yep.
Okay, and then,
Total
Um,
expenses?
I know you said it was OPEB?
I didn't reduce OPEB.
Okay.
Scott had proposed that
I'm
as
missing
a
one
way.
change then, because I have total expenses at 14530,682. So I have public safety,
Library construction payment, is that 130,067?
130,067.
Yep.
What else did we change? You got EES down to 5718, or education down to 5718,641?
I'm sorry, say that number.
5718,
Just gonna
641.
Yeah, what do you need?
So expenses comes down to 14,372,626.
And then the last one, I think, is the one that I had tonight wrong, which is capital stabilization
Yeah, it is.
deposit. That's 747,110.
Because I looked at this.
14369,736.
736, which gives us a surplus of $2,891.
Correct. Brian, is that numbers that you've had, if you've followed that, or have you not made adjustments because we haven't asked you to? And that's okay, if you haven't, it looks like the answer is no, that's fine.
I was keeping track of them in a separate column.
That's fine, that's totally
Separate from
fine.
the numbers.
Nope, that's
I
fine.
can add them right
What
now.
was Jim's number again?
My total revenue was 1,437,627.
Yep.
Matches, yes.
My total expenses is 1,436,976.
I have 364, so I'm off by 5,000. What was the Public Works number?
834472.
Okay, what was the other one that was changed?
Public safety, 1269849.
1, 2, okay, that's my mistake. I had the wrong.
You're 60, not 65?
1269849.
Correct.
Okay, so then I have a total of 14369,736.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
3 yays for that number.
For a balance of free cash of 2,891.
Yes.
Technically raise and appropriate, because we've said we're
Yep.
going to deposit all, of the free cash.
That might be the tiniest deposit ever into the assessor's overlay account at the end of the year.
I can make it work.
So, yes, that is what I was proposing as a solution, which would include the increases requested this year. Regardless of opinions or feelings about how we got there. And adjusting for cadet and for the equipment operator from last year's requests that were reduced.
So, does anybody have readily available what our total expenses was from last year? Budget we went to the town with?
Say that one more time?
Yes. He's looking for the FY24 operating budget summary, the same summary, but.
The same
total
summary, I'm
expenses,
just
I
looking
should
for,
say.
yeah, expenses is,
Do you have that sheet for last year handy?
Yes. I thought you wanted expenses actual, and I was gonna.
No.
Oh, no,
dig
no,
into
no,
the
no, no,
database.
no,
Okay.
no,
No,
What did
no.
we, what was this sheet last year that we, when we went forward, right?
Got it.
I don't know if I can scroll that fast.
To get to those numbers, I just want to make sure I'm getting my question answered.
Okay.
Does that include the clerk,
The,
assessor's clerk?
yes. It's without reducing that, because it's already in
Right.
the
okay.
totals, yes.
So that's already in there?
Yes.
Does that include the library that was already in there?
It does.
Okay.
Yep,
Just making sure that I'm on the same page, because
Yep.
I had it in there as both included.
yep.
Okay.
And for the record, I don't think any of us have a issue with the reasoning for them. It's just process,
yeah.
and we're
No.
having new process, and it's learning curves for all of us.
Yep, I get it.
And I think we had a 20-something thousand dollar reduction in the assessing budget last year because retirement was extended, and we had originally budgeted for a principal assessor or
So-
equivalent replacement. So I do want to acknowledge that that's a lower request, and
So you were looking for what our FY24 budget was?
yes.
like this
The
sheet,
budget
what was the
sheet,
total
yeah.
expenses?
So I have 13 million. Hold on, I got Zoom. Oh, come on. Brian's already making faces over there.
Well, my concern is that it's not gonna reflect what happened at town meeting, and we move things around at town meeting.
It is not gonna have that in there, so
Right.
that would be the only caveat.
Is this
But we
something I can get
spent,
for
well,
you?
no, hang on.
Okay.
Before you finish that, we spent the same amount of money out of town meeting. It's the buckets it was in that changed, correct?
Right, and I don't know what we're about
Right,
to use it
so-
for, so I don't wanna miss.
Okay, the method to
Yep.
my right brain right now is, I am in my own brain trying to justify the validity of the needs for these items being added in against what our taxpayers have said is, we want to keep it within reason. So in my brain, if last year's budget is, if this year's budget is within range of last year's budget, and we are as close to level funded with our levy limit and everything else, in my brain, I can justify and say, we are being prudent, we have heard you, and we are keeping it within the tolerance.
I mean,
And
this is-
coming forward with a balanced budget. I know it might be a different way of looking at things, but it's how my brain started to go. How can I justify the valid arguments that have come from many places in the table and get to the end?
And I would say this uses the full 2.5% allowed. And it makes some adjustments in areas that we traditionally have just level funded despite them being higher
Right,
actuals.
correct.
So the year over year is going to look a lot higher because we aren't adjusting last year's for actuals.
Right,
And in this year, we're projecting more like those actuals.
right.
So,
because-
but just for reference, it doesn't change what
Right,
you're asking.
and I understand we're accounting for additional growth and the change in our interest earnings over 2/3 of the operating year's budgets. What I'm saying is if we look at the last year's budgeted expenses versus this year's, or current year's budgeted expenses compared to what we are budgeting for next year, and I'd like to see what the difference is between the two.
I can do that for you this week, I cannot do that for you tonight, and say it's accurate. I need to go back and look at town meeting and move things, make sure that the draft material matches what happened, and I can't do that at
I'm
this
not
moment.
holding you to a hard number, I'm just trying to justify it in my head.
I know.
So.
Can I make a proposal?
Well, hang on. So you have a guess at what the number was because we have this sheet last year.
Brian is gonna
So
kill me.
this
if I
is not Brian's number. This isn't saying this is an actual
No,
number, but
and
this
this
is
isn't-
Everybody at home heard this.
it's a working draft document from last year, pre-town meeting, estimated number. Please.
Should I whisper it?
No.
No, it is me doing this, and I am not holding Brian to any of this. I
Right.
am trying to find a balance in my head, so if you would.
Sure. So I will preface this, that this was from March of 2023, and it was 13,138,944. And it says draft all over my document
Thank you.
in big blue
I
letters.
try to make sure that that's easy to read.
I don't have to zoom in on that word.
Does that have the capital spend and the expense side? I don't think it does it.
I'm taking the fifth.
I'm just wondering, down the expense side column there, I don't know if it had like a capital expenditure total. Or, I'm just curious. I could be wrong.
No, I do not. It has the capital stabilization fund deposit that we did.
That was at 400 before it got changed.
It was, on this document, that number is not 400,000.
The 400 came from two places, I believe.
Oh, that's
Maybe
right.
three.
No, I am not seeing, because all of that capital mostly came out of the free cash.
Right, and
At
for
my
whatever
brief
reason-
glancing at this, I am not seeing the free cash listed.
What was your balance at the bottom of that sheet? The free cash rate's appropriate.
Balance of raise and appropriate is negative 84,057, and balance of free cash is 227,551.
Yeah, we split it up differently. We did it, that was when we started actually allocating which came from where, and so it's.
Yep.
Did that at least answer your question to some degree,
No,
right or wrong?
Yeah, no, it
accurate
answered-
or not?
Right or wrong. And again, it just,
Okay.
working with rough numbers and nothing.
Okay. Brian, you wanted to say something? or recommend something?
I think there's more changes that you all are about to make to the ATM warrant. Sounds like you've made a lot of proposed changes to the budget. I'm wondering how realistic it is that either document's going to be approved tonight. Because there's a lot of reconciling, I think, that we need to do to give you one solid document to review, as opposed to everybody's notes. And so, not that I want you to have another meeting, but I'm wondering if tonight we, instead of leaving with approved budget documents, we just leave with instructions on what revisions you want to see and bring you back that draft so you can finalize this.
I'm not gonna presume we can or can't at this moment. I would presume the budget that we just tied the numbers to that I was proposing only has like 4 changes to the ATM in it. So I don't think at the moment that it's substantial in terms of how much we'd have to do to get there, because I don't think we're changing a bunch of different omnibus lines by a bunch of different small amounts.
Okay.
But that, I don't know the answer to that until we decide what it is. If we get to a decision, I think then we can decide if that's true or not, personally.
We also still have the Church Street project to discuss this evening, correct?
Yes, we do, but that will not affect, that's not meant to affect the budget.
I'm not talking
No,
budget,
just
I'm talking
timeline.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I was just gonna say, in the essence of time, if you're willing to, I'll make a motion to move this along. You ready?
Yeah, anytime.
I agree with your numbers, we ran through them, I'm gonna say them one more time before I make or as I make my motion, check your sheet, make sure they're the same. But I'll make a motion to put forward an FY25 budget with a total revenue line of $14,372,627 and a total expense line of $14,369,736, leaving a balance of free cash and raise and appropriate of $2,891.
I will second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the proposed budget?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Please say no. I want it from the whole group. I know that we put this, like, this is the proposed from everybody. It's got capital, it's got everything. So let me start that over because it's.
I don't think it was clear that it was.
Yeah, no, that's why I said,
off-board vote.
let me go back. This is really for,
Each board can vote separately.
yeah, okay, that's fine too. I was asking the question to do the overall budget draft as we put it together as has been amended tonight. If you all want to vote on it as a single one, that's fine. If you want to do them separately, that's fine, to whether or not this is the one that we go forward with. Yes, sir.
Thomas just asked, does he have to recuse himself because there's a highway position?
No.
Okay.
I am not a lawyer. Let me clarify. I am not a lawyer. I would say it's not directly benefiting you
Right, yeah, that's what I
financially,
thought.
so I don't believe you have a conflict. And to some degree, most of us at the table are involved in something that we are voting on in aggregate, so it's more of an aggregate vote. I think you're okay.
Could I move that the Finance Committee recommend the budget as Scott has proposed it?
Thank you.
Much easier that way.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Can I ask one question first?
Is there any discussion?
Yes. Can I ask one question first?
Sounds like yes.
All the numbers that we've discussed.
Yes.
The net result of it is we're still roughly $2,000 to the good.
Correct. We're in the black.
Okay. That's what I wanted to find out.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Oh, was that,
No, I would like to say that because of the discussion I had tonight, which crosses the line for me more than I usually discuss anything, I'll abstain from the vote, please. So there's no repercussion that anything I said or did comes back on me as trying to influence anything financially for myself. So I don't
Okay.
ever do that, so I'll abstain from that.
okay.
If I may, before you call for a vote,
Yep.
I didn't mean to insinuate that. I don't think that's the case. I just wanted clarity because you are usually very clear about where you were sitting, and I only was asking it for that level of clarity. So please don't think that I thought that.
No, I took no offense, and I avoid anything to do with conflict like the plague. I really do.
Wish we could do that some days.
Seeing no further discussion, I'm calling a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Just pass the FinCom with one abstention, majority.
I will say that the board already made a motion, seconded, and the board approved it, recommending it. So I'll make a motion the capital planning committee recommends the budget as proposed.
Second?
You're the chair still, right?
You're the chair still.
I'm asking. I
Yes,
see you're looking,
I'm
but I'm not
asking for a
positive.
second.
I will second.
I kind of needed the second.
I thought you seconded.
No, I said, can I have a second?
Oh,
sounded
there
like
was
a
question. I thought you said
I did
second.
too.
I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, I
I will
made a motion,
second.
you were looking for a second.
All right.
You seconded, I gotcha.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. We're good.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a budget. Now,
Can I ask for one more thing? Because
you
we
want a lot of
spent
things tonight. No, yes, sir.
My to-do list over the next week is
I know.
intense. We spent a lot of time in spreadsheets over the last few weeks,
Yes.
which was necessary.
Yes,
Typically, at the same time, I would have given you your draft budget book,
yes.
so it could go to the printer. I now need to build that all week. I can do most of that by myself with the information that you've given, but usually the select board prepares an introductory message. Would a member work with me on that so I could get that done and get this to the printer?
I nominate Scott.
I second.
Wow,
All in favor?
I'll swing by Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I appreciate it.
You owe me, Brian.
I think I owe you too.
Thursday at 3 p.m.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the requests. ATM warrant drafts. And I'll start with, is there anything significant that anybody had? Because there'll be the financial changes that we've just proposed and recommending tonight.
Right.
But other than that, is there anything that anyone had going through the ATM for discussion or review?
No.
Okay. Then I'm gonna just kind of quickly go article by article, and we'll make adjustments or comment on adjustments and come to consensus that they match what we just did for budget along the way. Does that work for you, Brian?
That is perfectly fine. Can you just give me one moment?
I can.
I'm going to track change it as I go. Okay, I have it ready.
Okay. We already amended the opening on the annual town elections.
Correct.
General articles, Article 1, modified the calendar year to comment that is a calendar year town report.
Correct.
Article 2, federal state grants authorization. Article 3, dispose of surplus property. Article 4, authorization to enter into compensating balance agreements. Article 5 is getting into fiscal year 2025 operating budget. Where do we want to put the fiscal year 2024 operating budget, which will be the elected officials comp article? Do you want to put it before, after, somewhere else? Any preference?
Where do we normally or let me ask it this way. Have we had other annual town meetings where we have had cleanup or leftover articles that we've needed to insert?
For the current operating budget, the current year operating budget?
Yeah, like,
We've usually done them as special,
Yeah, that's what I'm
so
thinking.
it's easier to
okay.
segment.
So do you have a special one article prior to the annual?
Now, you could do that, but I think that it's easy enough if you're already gonna do this warrant, to just give it a very clear heading that's a FY '24 amendment.
Then I would put it right here. I would put it as article number 4.
And I was just scrolling down, we have capital for FY '24 and FY '25, and that's what we did. We started with '24 and went to '25. So we'll
Yep.
so Article 4 will be the, if I scroll back here, it will be the FY 2024 elected official compensation, similar to Article 6, but adjusted for the '24 request.
And then I'll just readjust everything.
Down
which
from there?
Means that in Article, what is currently Article 6, I need to change the footnotes to redirect everybody to where the money's raised.
Yeah, what he said?
So Article 6 has a footnote that the
So-
elected official comp is set, but it points to other articles that are raising and appropriating it.
Yes, gotcha. You'd have to tweak those. Okay.
So I'll make those
Thank you.
adjustments too.
So FY 24 will be that. That'll be Article 4. FY 20, I'm sorry, that'll be Article 5. FY 25 operating budget will start on Article 6. It will be what is 5 in our draft. Those numbers, we need to change the public safety number
Right.
to, are you ready?
Yep.
1269849.
6. Okay.
The public works to 834472.
Okay.
And then assuming the rest of the numbers are right, the new total would be 6598683.
That was 6.5.
98683.
Okay.
Which should be 125,000 more than it was. 598, is that what I said? 598,683? Yep, and that ties.
Okay.
Elected official compensation for FY '25 will be the same, save for adjustments to the reference articles. Article 8 will be the Erving Elementary School funding, which is now 3789432.
We'll make the rest of those changes.
Okay. Something in the,
I meant to explain in last week's version of that article, I was going to break out wage from ordinary expense more as an accounting exercise, but we don't do that in the other articles, so I was putting it back the way it was. So that's part of that revision that you were all seeing this weekend in that deletion of line 3. It's just-
gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha, okay. Article 9 will be secondary ed. No change in the total, except to add the zeros on the end of the grant. Oh, no, that's the third one. No changes there. Article 9, Article 10 will be Franklin Tech school funding. We're just adding zeros on the end. Article 11 will be the Water Department Enterprise Fund.
Well, one thing I just want to fix on this, I had placed retained earnings as a subline item under total expenditures, and after reviewing it with council, I'm going to move that up for a cleaner presentation underneath ordinary expenses. So retained earnings will just show as part of the expense category, because it's a planned deposit.
Right, right. It'll look more like a balance sheet.
Right, and it will balance out to that 110,965.
Yep, yep. And Jim's financial eye will appreciate that too. Other than that, no changes in the dollar amounts there?
No.
We do like our balance sheets.
Yes, we do. Article 12, wastewater enterprise fund. No changes there.
Could I suggest that because we do have a lot of business to continue,
Yeah.
if we have articles that don't have changes, could we skip right over them and just go to the ones that have changes? Would that be possible, Chair?
Sure. I will have to, we'll use the old numbering then. And where there isn't numbers, we'll just have to find them.
Okay.
Article 12, just adding zeros on the end. There was no changes to those items otherwise. We didn't change OPEB, so, okay.
Right.
The next one was adjusted, the FY24 capital improvements was adjusted to include the extrication equipment for the fire department.
Does that read how you all were intending?
Yes, it moves it up into 24.
Right.
Yep.
Fully sourced out of the stabilization fund.
And this will be Article 14?
That sounds right.
Moved
Yes.
on from numbering.
Yeah, it's 14.
Yep, looks like it. FY25 capital improvements. Remove the extrication equipment because it's the current year.
Right.
Yep.
That's 230. Wastewater capital project dollars was updated.
Yep.
Right.
Revolving. Just a visual. Appropriation for capital stabilization, so this was updated to oh, okay, you incorporated the balance one there, okay, got it.
I
So
almost
this
did it as
closes
a-
out.
Correct. I almost did it as a separate article,
Okay.
but it made sense. I thought
Yeah.
maybe just to keep it together.
Yep, so this is closing out the exhaust capture systems and okay.
Yeah, and that's what threw me. Just double check, because we're not going to sign it tonight. So double check with council or with prior ones. Transfers, I think, had a different heading than appropriate. So I don't know if it matters because we're not appropriating that money or if it's okay because we're combining them.
I think the title is fine because you are appropriating
Okay,
into the stabilization fund, and
Okay.
the description within the motion,
is sufficient.
well, it says specifically that you're transferring from free cash and you're transferring from that project. So the sources do clarify that
Okay,
there.
and they're both transfers. I got you.
Right.
I follow. Okay, thank you.
And I changed the free cash, so it's only, and I knew that the 110 was important, so I made sure I got that in there too.
Other than that, the next one was a borrowing authorization for, this is the debt exclusion expenditure, and this needs to be 3.7 million, not 3.4.
I will change that to read 3.7.
Does this have the 3-year on it? It doesn't.
You don't need to put, you can
So
put it
this
in
one
the
doesn't have it
description.
either? Okay. I know we didn't in the other one, but it doesn't need to be in here either. It's just for
Right.
the length of it, and then we can speak to it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't, okay,
So I'll modify the article information.
to 4.3. Okay. Any other changes on that one? We're good?
Nope, good.
Looks good.
Okay. And then the opioid one that you were recommending, you did not put in here yet, right? Or
I
did
didn't put it in until you agreed.
So
It's on
the
that
health
memo.
department is ready to start using that funding?
We were working with the Board of Health, the chiefs,
Public safety, yep.
and ideally the school to work on our programming. But until we have funding available, they can't set the programming. So the way I've structured it proposes that the select board would oversee the disbursement of the funds, working with the Board of Health, and we'll convene that group to finalize the programming.
They're ready to do that in fiscal '25.
We're trying to do it for FY '25, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Any concerns with adding it in?
No.
Because it's just allocation of the existing funds.
It just makes it available, so we'll be able to pull it from the capital
Start
stabilization
using
and
it.
set up the fund, correct?
The capital, not capital stabilization.
You created an opioid stabilization fund.
Okay, add that in,
Okay, do you care where it,
where it would fit.
under the stabilization funds?
Yes, please. Okay. Well, obviously, we talked through it amended, but is there a motion to approve the ATM as amended?
I will make that motion to.
Second.
Okay. The Erving FY '25 proposed budget as amended.
Annual town meeting warrant.
What's that?
The annual town meeting warrant.
I'm sorry. It's
Let's roll
late.
that back.
The annual town meeting as amended.
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Are we to assume that the recommendations made prior was that everyone was recommending all articles as appropriate where we are carried?
Let's make it clean. Why don't I just, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend the annual town meeting warrant as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Unanimous.
Thank you.
I don't ever ask those two, so no matter what, I am, because I'm trying to train myself to do it.
Thank you.
I have the bad habit of if I hear, 'cause it's only
Repetition.
two and I know it's unanimous, I won't, but. I need to do it
Repetition.
too. Do you want to do the same for capital?
Sure, but I noticed that capital planning doesn't have its own little thing on there about, does capital planning approve?
On the capital items?
should on capital
does,
items.
Doesn't it? Let me go back.
Okay.
It,
We're not gonna go through
it's-
just the capital items, we're gonna. approve the whole
well,
thing.
blanket is for the ones that was appropriate, right? Like you're recommending the whole thing, but the specifics are the ones that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's how I took that recommendation, was that it's the totality, but that includes the recommendations for individual lines promoted by.
I would so make that motion.
Second? Oh, wow, you freaked me out there, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I said aye too. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? We're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So, that's it for budget.
Yes.
Okay, that's in the
Church
book.
Street and asset management left.
Yep, so, review of the proposed amendment for engineering, to the engineering agreement for the Church Street Bridge. Yes, sir?
Will we potentially be able to swap orders so we can get Superintendent Sanders out of here?
Yes.
You got me till the end, so. I'm not going anywhere, so.
No, that's fine. I didn't
Asset
realize he was
management.
staying just for that.
Yeah.
Although I understand why he is and appreciate it. All right, so we'll switch. Review the wastewater department asset management project report. And come on up. And I will preface this with, there is no expectation that we're going to get deep into this tonight. It's huge. There's a lot in there. It's more about understanding how that impacts, how that will impact future year budgeting and to get it on the horizon for people to start looking at it. So I will let one of you summarize. Obviously, we're in brief mode.
Yep. Ms. Sir?
Okay, these are the findings from the asset management plan that we had Time Bond do for us. Basically, the highlights, the part to be more concerned with, or the most important part of this, is section 5, which lists in priority as to what needs to be fixed immediately, what type of a time schedule. It also break down, if you go into it further, the possible costs to do these things. There was one correction, I just got an email tonight from Joe, did you see that?
No, not yet.
Okay, so there's a change in the cost
Okay,
on one of the line items in here, so,
okay.
and it lessens it by a million, so that's
That's
important.
fantastic news.
Yeah.
That's not a small amendment. We'll take it, it's good.
Yes. So basically, we're to use the plan to figure out where we want to put some of these projects on capital in the future, what's going to be the most important ones. They're based down for each wastewater plant, POTW 1, 2, and 3. It's also broken down into the pump stations and the collection system. And each plan is broken down, you'll be able to see that. So it gives us a lot of information to plan how we want to address these things.
And I know it's in there, and just for the viewing audience, this was the wastewater asset management plan development of this report, and plan
Correct.
was a requirement of DP.
Yes,
And so this report is the, kind of the output of that, meeting that requirement. And then,
Yes.
obviously, future requirements will be to implement the things found in terms of improvements required or
Right.
mitigation in the future. I'm sure if we proactively are looking at this and start penciling a timeline in and working through that, we'll be looked upon more favorably than being told, both in our own planning and from the EP standpoint.
Correct.
Just that, if we start approaching it that way and working through a plan, then when they ask about these things and when we're gonna do stuff, we're gonna have answers. It's gonna probably be more
sufficient.
advantageous for us
Right.
in having that than being told, you gotta do it,
Correct.
get on it, so. There's a lot in there. I'm sure a lot of them cost a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
Some of them, I haven't gotten through the whole thing, right? I don't think anybody has, and except Pete.
I'm not all the way through it. It's a lot of information if you look at the whole plan.
And, a lot of it's capital, and a lot of it, there's a fair amount that will apply to the plant operated by Erving Industries, so we'll
Right.
have to collaborate with them on getting that executed within their agreement. So there'll be a lot to it, but I wanted to get it in front of everybody. It will be future budget and future capital, more things to pencil on that list. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Table 5-1, where it talks about risk,
Yes.
why would we be doing none risk?
That would be like a replacement of time on the wear and tear on equipment. Some of the stuff like that would be kicked out, you're talking in the 10 to 20-year window down the line. So it's not a risk current to the operation of the plants.
Okay.
For a failure or electronic components get old, they wear out.
Okay.
Motors, machines, pumps,
Can you
pipes.
See, that's low risk.
Where it says POTW 1, 2, and 3,
Yes.
you have.
Oh, none.
None.
It's 5-1.
Oh, okay,
Right.
So
none.
that's like
I was
your-
reading the detail and
I was
not
looking
reading
at
the
that as
table
well, and
for
I
whatever
looked at that
reason.
as, that's your future planning for, there's probably $5 million on POTW number 1.
Right.
In the next 25 years, doesn't fall into a category of risk,
So
but it's a known capital expense, it's gonna happen.
It's a wish list.
It's a wish list.
Someday maybe. Okay.
Correct.
Or someday you'll need to.
You'll
but
need
just
this
we
at
don't
some
have a
point, but
risk
not right
level
now.
Today, right?
Okay. Thanks, Pete.
This, I believe, and it's been a while since I've looked at the wastewater tab in the capital improvement plan, but likely that was mostly focused on POTW number 1, maybe some of the pump stations. This is a much more comprehensive look, including plant 2, but all of your collection systems, we never had inventory prior. So
Right.
we now have a full understanding of the full wastewater assets in this moment in time. We should build this into your multi-year plan and start to have a conversation about what those future improvements look like. The one thing that the engineers reminded us of, while they've got it broken out into this table of different risk positions, a capital project that you may do may actually, just because of its nature, touch on multiple buckets. Sure. So one project may address multiple places and may actually reduce that sort of, maybe something done 5 years out from now also addresses a concern that's in the 10-year bucket.
Okay.
So I think that's some of the nuance and complexity that we need to meet with the capital planning committee on. And we probably, if there's time for it, should do it in advance of next year's budget so that we can all have a really good understanding of what we're going to focus on for the FY26 requests or FY27 requests and start making a game plan for those things.
And if you need to know exactly what, I mean, this will say one thing, like certain parts, pieces of equipment. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you don't even know what it is because you don't work with it, but, any questions we can answer, I can answer. And then at some point, we'll probably have to do a little walk around at POTW number 2.
Yep.
Define that list down to
Right.
what we need to get fixed there.
So yeah, more of a, kind of for the group, just, this is out there now, we have it. We have submitted it or will be in the next few days.
I didn't want DP to wonder if we were ready, so I just gave them the draft and I let them know that we were presenting tonight.
Yep.
Hopefully the green light was given to us to do a final submission and close out this grant project with DEP. And then this technically flows to the next stage, which is presenting at the Capitol and starting that process.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I guess for the board, any concerns with submitting it?
None.
Obviously the revised version that came in
Yeah,
with-
obviously with,
Right,
I
it was
should
just
say that.
emailed to
Obviously
me,
with,
Brian.
with the late breaking
And we'll get that
changes.
revised change out to all of you.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with that, and I would encourage Capital to try to schedule some time, as we get into quote-unquote the off-season here, let's get past annual and special coming up. But as we get into early fiscal '25, to talk through some of this in the outside of the budget schedule, probably good, because there's a lot here, and to start digesting it.
Will there be an off-season this year?
No.
It wasn't last year.
I think there'll be regular work. I'm hoping there's an off-season in terms of budget.
It's very optimistic of you.
Isn't it though? Oh, well, hopefully the balanced budget we just proposed will get us there. Anything else on this plan for today? Okay, thank you all for that one. And last but not least, thank you, Pete.
Yep.
More to come on that.
Huh?
I said a lot more to come on that for you, but not
yeah.
tonight.
I'll be busy.
Thank you for staying.
Yep.
Review the proposed amendment to the engineering agreement for Church Street Bridge. So, as we went through the process, and I'm just paraphrasing what Brian put together in the memo, we learned about and became part of the local TIP or regional TIP process, Transportation Improvement Plan process. Found that we might be able to get some state/federal funding for this project, as we had the borrowing authority just approved, and so we went down that path. We're still on that path. Not gone as fast as we wanted, but we're there. They, did identify early on that there would be some additional costs in going through the state and federal process, and we said we were on board for that because, well, it's free money if we get it, right? And it's a big project, so it's taken a while to get there, but now we have a number, and it's $335,000 for the additional work. Because DOT requirements and the whole process are obviously much more intensive than what we had already engineered with them. Just in terms of resources, and a lot of it's probably repeating the same stuff in different ways, but they have been doing a lot of work on it, I will say, so.
And this still falls under the grant awarding, right? They had 2.2, up to 2.2 or something like that.
So the design piece falls on the town. The construction, the 2.2 is for the construction phase.
Okay.
And MassDOT takes that on. Once it hits construction and the bid process takes over, MassDOT absorbs the rest of those costs through the state and federal funds. But the design and getting to that
That's right.
final approval is on the town.
And that's to 100%, right? They don't take it on until it's at 100% design?
100% design, ready bid.
Ready to bid?
Yep.
And this amendment does not have any post-design work? There's no bid or project
That was all
management in
your
this
initial-
amendment.
that was in
We
your
already
initial
funded
report.
that, yep.
Yep.
So this 335 is only design work.
All
Right.
of that. Because of the public hearings and all of the, we're meeting with them every 2 weeks. They're meeting with MassDOT even more regularly to go back through all the revisions and resubmit. It was much more laborious than I think a normal municipal project would have experienced.
And so we still have the borrowing authorization for the bridge. That funding's still there. We still have the authorization to go do that. We haven't done it yet.
Correct.
We don't have any excess in the already appropriated funds that are not a borrowing today.
As of today, correct. Yep.
So, obviously approving the amendment and going forward, and they've done a lot of this work. I mean, we need to be fair to, we said, yes, please, and they said,
Yeah.
okay, so this isn't all future work kind of thing. They've done a lot of this already on that faith that we said yes, and they said okay, and we're doing it. We would potentially borrow to fund it.
Yeah.
Depending on when those bills come due and what we have, maybe we could do something else at that time, but right now, this cost will probably be more incurred in '25 than '24, is that?
There's a piece that will incur this year. We're having the 25% design hearing, which is an important milestone.
It's in like 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
18.
And then we'll be working towards the 75% design, which hopefully will happen by July, late July, early August. And then if everything goes right, get to 100% for September and bidding. So that piece should go quickly.
Yeah, and so it's all about timing, but potentially 2/3 of this might fall into the next fiscal year, and so we could at that point choose to potentially fund it a different way.
Right, if another source shows up.
If we
Yep.
want to, but we do have the borrowing authority, so it is funded from our
Yep.
ability to. Any questions or concerns about moving forward or continuing forward?
None.
Nope.
Okay.
It's like a,
Yes, please, if you have one. Did you ask me if I wanted a motion? Or were you?
no,
Or were you asking
what I
something
was
else? I'm sorry.
saying was spending this additional amount of money to get it funded for that several $1 million makes sense, but that being said,
And I didn't even think to give you suggested vote language. I
That's fine.
apologize.
that's okay.
That's okay.
Do you, just to clarify, do you want all boards voting, or?
Everybody was okay with it, and we can approve the amendment. The
Okay.
board can. I just wanted to make sure
Just
that
wanted to make sure.
everyone was getting, no, it's good. It's fine. Yeah, I appreciate the question, the clarity. The board will
CYA.
approve the amendment of the contract as long as everyone was good with it, which is what I heard, so.
So
You had a question, sir, or no?
I no longer have a question, no. You were, so at this point, you are looking for a motion?
I am.
So I would make a motion that we approve the proposed contract amendment for Weston and Sampson Engineering on the Church Street Bridge project. The contract amendment is in the amount of $335,000.00.
I will.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
It was the FY24 budget amendment, if you all have time for that.
Thank you. Oh, my goodness. How did I miss that one?
It's a one-page memo.
So we have, for FY '24, we had the money we put aside for the wage adjustments.
Oh, yes.
We did all the wage adjustments. We kind of went through and reconciled a fair amount of that, and have a recommendation to move about 105 of it over to various different omnibus blocks in the FY '24 budget to offset those changes, right? Because that's what we put the money aside for. The language was that we had to all approve it. All. FinCom board, that was the.
Select Board and FinCom oversee this.
Yep.
It's like your reserve fund.
Yep, so we had language in there that said the movement of it to somewhere else was the vote of our groups together. So we put that together. Is there any questions on it or anything? It's basically moving the funding over to adjust for the wages that we've already done to balance the '24 budget.
I'm gonna be very honest, I don't recall seeing the memo. Was that,
Came out this afternoon in the additional materials I sent you.
is it in the packet you printed for us?
Yes. What page is it on? For the select board, it's on 67.
Okay.
For... Folder, 1 second. For FinCom members, it is on page... It is on page 40.
I think it's right there, no?
Is that
Is
it?
that it? It looks like a
Yep.
memo with a table in the middle, so
It's
it
more
looks
toward,
right.
yep. Oh,
No, I can't read from over
1
here.
second,
It just
please.
looks like it. Do you gentlemen have any questions while they're reviewing it?
No.
I will make a motion to transfer the sum of $105,600 from the wage adjustment special article and to amend the FY 2024 omnibus budget by making the following adjustments. Add $35,800 to general government, add $32,300 to public safety, add $21,900 to public works, add $10,100 to wastewater, and add $5,500 to culture and recreation.
Second.
Any discussion, and if you guys need more time, please let me know.
I'm all good?
All good.
Okay. We'll vote with you, so we don't have to repeat all that.
Sounds good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll
Now I
make
have
those
nothing.
adjustments
What?
and we'll let each department know the individual amounts and we'll update the FY '25 proposed operating to reflect these included in '24, so the year-over-year
difference.
looks more accurate.
Yeah.
Did you have a?
I was just gonna, before someone made a motion to, end it, there was discussion, that was poor phrasing. There was discussion prior that you had to do something for Brian before the meeting adjourned, and I just wanted to clear, because we've done that before and then forgotten.
It was the election warrant.
Okay,
Yes, I needed to make sure that was done
just
tonight.
double checking.
Yep, that had to be done tonight.
I was afraid it was gonna be one of those, oh,
Everything else could have
crud.
waited, that had to be done tonight.
Yeah,
So,
some of it
thank
could have
you.
gone 2 or 3 more days, but not that.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're good.
We're good.
Motion to
Thank
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for the long haul. I think next time we'll see you all is at the annual. Unless something comes up till then, between then, we'll see you all at the annual.
Boy, it's a nice break. I don't have to see
For
you again.
them.
Oh, wait.